Good? Just checking. Are we good? I think we're good. Well, it's just 6:30. This is our second meeting of being at 6:30 in 2017. Tonight is January 17th, Tuesday night. It's a regularly scheduled meeting of the Marquette Township Board. And we'd appreciate if you'd join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Randy, please.
Okay. Excuse me. Trustee LaRue?
Here.
Trustee Wiegand?
Here.
Trustee Everson?
Here.
Trustee Marks?
Present.
Treasurer Johnson?
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Staff present is Manager Gerard, Township Attorney Roger Zappa, Planner, Zoning Administrator Jason McCarthy, and Superintendent of Public Works Kirk Page, and committee member here is Mike Springer from Roads, Recreation, and Planning.
Great, thank you. We'll try not to have you have to talk too much tonight.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda, which tonight will consist of approval of regular minutes and closed session minutes of January 3rd. Received in committee and other reports, including the Sheriff's Department Activity Report, the Water Production Report, and the Fire Department Monthly Report, all of December of 16. Correspondence not requiring board action is a kind of a typical charter newsletter, although this one was much more comprehensive. They do have a children's network channel now, which is kind of nice, channel 199, I believe, PBS. Also, bills payable in the amount of $316,655.67, and I would look for approval unless somebody would like to bring anything out.
Reports.
Yes, sir.
We could pull the Sheriff's Department activity report out for discussion.
Sure. Did you, okay. Maybe put it at the end, is that all right?
Sure,
Like
fine.
F, 11F. Sheriff's report. Okay. We had a motion and second, so you're okay with that amendment then, to pull that out?
Yes.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, then we just need a motion to approve the remainder of the agenda with the inclusion of the sheriff's report being 11F.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Next up is public comment. If there's anybody that'd like to address the board before we get into our meeting, come up to the podium, name and address. Nobody wants us. That's okay, too. Okay, then we can go to board member comment. Anybody have anything to share? Ernie?
I have just one on the, goes back to the fire department's report on the vehicle status. I know Ron is coming in within the next couple of meetings to talk about it, and I think maybe we need to have him address the vehicle status, because I was real concerned when I started looking through it and the condition of some of the vehicles, and they may not be as bad as they say. I don't know, but I'm just concerned with that too, so.
Well, they identify all the little tweaks basically that are on there, so there's a running record, and they check those off as they're repaired. But Ron will be here starting at your next meeting. He intended to be here this evening, but he had another commitment that came up that was unavoidable for tonight.
If he can just address it, because I was really concerned when I started looking through them on that.
Yeah, as we discussed at the last meeting, he'll be coming in at each meeting basically to see if you have any questions or concerns regarding department operations or the reports or whatever, but he'll be here as the chief to address any concerns that you have.
Yes, Randy.
We just had a training last week with Susan Radwan. It was a very good training for the board and for committee members. And just to let the public know that there were some recommendations that came out of that, and the board hasn't approved those yet, but I'm thinking if they do approve them, you're going to see some of the things in the meetings change a little bit. It's not going to be a big wholesale change, but it'll change a little bit. So I'd like the residents and the staff to be, I guess, patient with us until we get to where we need to be, because it's almost like it's kind of like reinventing ourselves a little bit. And for example, things that we would approve on the agenda for an action item could be put into the consent agenda, and to make the meetings more efficient then. So it's going to be things like that moving forward that you might notice that are going to be different. And we'll try to keep the public informed when we start doing these things. So that's all I have.
Good, thanks for sharing that. Anybody else?
Two things. First, on the road committee, I got an initial report from Upper Peninsula Engineers and Architects on our status for the budget and for the work that we need to, that is left on that road rehabilitation project for 2017. He's going to sit down with Randy and I on Friday, I'm thinking, that, and we'll be able to get a little more direction on where the Public Works is going with that next year, and see if we can get some firmer numbers for us. But right now we're on budget for 2015. We were under budget by almost $250,000 for 2016, and looks like we got about $1.4 million left for 2017's work. That whole thing, as it stands, puts us about $94,000 over budget, but I don't think that's a true number because it doesn't include any public work stuff. So we're going to have a meeting on Friday and see if we can sort it out.
So we'll have another 3 weeks before we meet again, so
Yeah, I'll have something for you when we get back
by
together again.
that time, okay.
And the other thing is I would like to request that the road committee and the rec committee get put on the agenda for the next meeting. I'd like to get a little further direction from the board, or reaffirm the direction we've already got with respect to the US 41 corridor activities, and where you see the road committee and the rec committee involved in that. Right now we're kind of getting mixed signals, and we're not quite sure how much hands-on we're supposed to have there.
Why don't we, since we've got so much time to the next meeting, why don't we get together and figure out, what to put on the agenda, how to do it, who needs to be involved, or if we need to have a meeting first?
Okay.
Does that sound okay? So rec and roads?
Yes.
Good. Anything else?
That's it.
Pete?
Riding around the Trowbridge Park here, I'm noticing that, good thing we don't have too much snow, but people who are living on the corners are pushing their snow towards the intersection, and it's blocking the view and the clear sight of the intersection. It seems like the one they're doing it, the road is coming down towards the intersection, and they're plowing against the intersection, and it's blocking the view, so it's,
Okay.
I talked to one guy and just mentioned it to him, and, he said, well, I think I'll just push it the other way. So, but there's about 3 bad ones, and I just knew this guy, so we were just talking about it, plowing and that, and so I just mentioned, you should try to plow the other way. So, otherwise, I don't know if the county can do anything, Randy. If we give you the number or the addresses and just do something about that, I don't know.
Probably put the snow back where it came from.
Roads, that's right. It just causes problems.
Yeah. No, it's a good observation.
I know a couple of years ago, down a block north of that intersection, I talked to this guy, is that that's where I got hit. And some of the reason was, because I didn't see a guy coming down the hill. So maybe sometime we get gun shy and you sort of look out for all that stuff. So
I'll touch
Okay.
base with them.
Good.
I'll touch base with them to keep an eye out for that.
I'll give you addresses.
Okay, that'll work.
Anything else, John?
Nope.
Dan? I have a few things. This is one of the things we're gonna change, is I'm gonna put my little report in part of the packet, so the public will be able to see it too. Just means I have to get it done a little bit sooner, but I always like to kind of fill in the board and the public on what I'm working on. Some of it's important, some of it isn't, so hopefully by next meeting, it'll be just part of the packet, and it'll save a little bit of time, too. Did attend a Township Relations Committee meeting, which is the County Road Commission, with the supervisors or some members of the townships. They meet quarterly, so the last meeting was a couple weeks ago. And if you remember me mentioning that, or Randy too, that there's supposed to be funding coming for the next 6 years from the government as far as road upkeep and infrastructure. So Manager Iwaniki discussed that a little bit. They're expecting, a level of like $1 million a year for the next 6 years. So he's just kind of expecting that to happen, but we'll see if it actually does. He said you may have noticed that the gas prices went up about 35 cents in the last week or so, 10 days. And he just wanted you to know that the increase to the gas stations was only 7.3 cents. But they turned around and made it 35 for the public. So I think he doesn't want to get the blame that it's because of maybe that $1 million or something that the prices are higher at the pump. We also had a Downtown Development Authority meeting last week, and that is on the agenda. We're going to talk about that tonight. And we talked about the corridor, the US 41 corridor, which, could be from Chocolate Township right up, I don't know exactly what they consider, but at least it's 2.5 miles or so, or 2.25 miles in the township. So we're going to talk about that shortly. And as Randy said, excuse me, we did a 2-day strategic planning session. The first day was the township board and the manager for 8 hours, locked in a room. That was fun. And the second day we had committee members, volunteers, and staff, and spent about 4 hours. And we just shook things up a little bit. Susan Radwan did a great job of working through some of the questions we had and things we'd like to try. And so some of it will be implemented next month. We're going to try, starting with the agenda, make it a little bit easier. I've got to remind us that we need a new board photo too, so we need to put that on our post-it maybe for spring, or if we want to do it in here.
I have my hair done.
Yeah, I wanted to give you notice. We did have a business luncheon this afternoon with the Township Business Association. They had roughly 8 or so members of their committee meet with us. We met with them about 3 years ago and just hadn't gotten back to it. They meet once a month, and we suggested maybe we take their meeting and come in with them at lunch. So we did. Their president had a very long agenda. We didn't get through it all, but we agreed that we would probably meet quarterly now, from now on, at least to see how that works. So we'll meet with them again in April for at least an hour. We talked about the corridor improvements and enhancements, and again, you'll see that shortly. And they had some other issues, so we will try to address those as we get a chance. I also want to welcome 2 new firefighters we have, Amanda Arbelius and Jeff Fawcett. And we also have a full-time position open that we are advertising for, but I wanted to welcome those 2 new part-time firefighters on call. And I was thrilled to hear some of the reports, and I think they were in our packet too. 73% of our calls are made within 5 minutes. So if you dial 911, that's a pretty good average, I would say. And I believe it was like 96% or something within 10 minutes. So our guys and gals work really hard to make sure that the public's taken care of, and I just wanted to thank them for that. That's pretty awesome. We're going to have Ron come in. We talked about that. Just one little tidbit. The township government is very different from the private sector. And as a business owner, I learned that, and Randy kept telling me those first few years, well, it doesn't work like that in government. It doesn't work like that. Well, but human resources, no, it doesn't work like that. So I think it's hard for the public, too, to understand that when we do things, when we have meetings, when we notify you, when we put things in the paper, that's the way we have to do it. Trying to think of an example. If we can't just call people up and say, hey, there's such and such an item on the planning commission agenda tonight, you might want to check because I heard that you were going to be developing, this lot or something. We can't do that. We have to be for everybody. And the things that we do for the public are for everybody. We're here for the health, safety, and welfare of our residents and to meet their needs, not their wants. And that sometimes confuses people, and it's not because we don't want to, but that's what we're mandated to do. So if it would seem sometimes that we aren't doing what you think we should do, maybe it's because it's not for the whole. We have to do it for everybody. And that makes our job hard sometimes because, we have friends and neighbors that we'd like to be able to do things for too, and we can't. So I just kind of wanted that clarity out there that it's the public's responsibility too to come and talk to us if they have questions or they don't understand. You've got our phone numbers, we're on the website, so you can come in here. If you're not getting the information you need, we try very hard, but sometimes you just have to ask. So thank you for that 5 minutes. If you don't have anything to do Saturday night, go to Northern, the Rough Grouse Banquet. That's my own little personal ditty I wanted to throw in. Lots of fun prizes and excellent food. So, enough of that. All right, privileged comment. We have been asked, and I think we'll start with Jason if I'm not mistaken, or unless Ann wants to start. The topic is Brownfield Redevelopment Plan. It's the former Northwood Supper Club everybody might be familiar with. And we've had a request. So these folks are going to give us some more information.
You want to hand those out at the same time? Okay. So we've received a proposal to convert the former Northwood Supper Club into a brewery, tap room, tasting room, and bottling facility. It would be an approximate 15,000 square foot structure. The existing condition of the property has been such since 2007 when it was purchased by the previous owner. It has sat dormant and deteriorating since that time in 2007. So for 10 years, that building has been vacant and underperforming in the township. We have the prospective new owners here tonight. And one of the tools that is used in redevelopment of obsolete or functionally obsolete buildings is called a brownfield plan. And the county, as Ann Drew will talk about here in a little bit, serves as the umbrella of the Marquette County Brownfield Development Plan or program. And under certain conditions, that building, or any building for that matter, or property, can be funded in a certain way to help resurrect that building and, more importantly, to facilitate and be a catalyst for other development around it. So if you take a dilapidated building, fix it up, well, then it's going to be a catalyst for other properties in the area to locate or develop themselves. All the surrounding property in that area is commercial, so there are a few non-conforming residential structures across the street. But for the most part, it's all commercial along Northwoods Road until you get to the power line, and then it changes over to residential where the Northwood subdivision is. In staff's opinion, this is a very attractive reuse and creative reuse of a very historic and nostalgic building. The only review that would be necessary at the township planning and zoning staff level is the is likely a plot plan review because they're gonna be doing some revamping of the parking. But the structure itself won't likely have to go to site plan review because they're not really adding any impervious surface, they're simply rehabbing the building. But the land use itself, which involves food processing, per the ordinance, that does require a special use permit in the commercial district because it is a quasi-industrial land use. So that'll have to be accounted for. But one of the things that's necessary for the project to move forward is for the township to review and support the proposed brownfield component of that, the funding mechanism that's partially used to help these folks along. So with that, I will turn it over to Ann to explain to you in greater detail what that entails.
Thanks, Jason. I don't know if I've met all of you before, some of you, but my name's Ann Giroux. I'm the Marquette County Treasurer, and I happen to wear a couple other hats. One, the chair of the Land Bank Authority, and then the treasurer for the Brownfield Authority, and also kind of act as the executive director. So that's obviously what brings me here tonight. I don't know, you know, this is the first brownfield project in Marquette Township, so I hope you don't mind. I wanted to do a little bit of Brownfield 101, if you will. I'm guessing the last time maybe any of you might have heard about brownfields, it may have been your planning commission, would have been from Dottie LaJoy. She came around, we funded a brownfield inventory countywide. Whether some of you are involved in that or not, but that was a number of years ago, so I think it would be beneficial to go through just a few things about what exactly are brownfields and how do brownfield plans work before we get into the details of the plan. So the Michigan definition of what a brownfield is, it's pretty broad compared to other states, which is helpful for development. The typical, it can be one of four things, one of four categories that a brownfield site can fall into. The first one being a facility, and that's the one that you probably think of most of the time. It's a property that has contamination levels that are above residential cleanup criteria. So it's your typical contaminated sites that you generally would think of brownfields. In Michigan, there are three other ways that a property can qualify as a brownfield though. The second is a blighted property, so anything that's considered blighted by the local unit of government can be a potential brownfield. The third is functionally obsolete, so anything that can't be used for its original intended purpose. That is the category under which the Northwoods has been designated a brownfield. Some other examples, the former Bunny Bread Factory in the city of Marquette, that was another functional obsolete classification for a brownfield property. And the fourth one, and this one's kind of new, but it can be a historic resource. So a building, if it happens to be historic, can also qualify as a brownfield, believe it or not. So there are lots of different things that can be brownfields. You know, you usually think of your corner gas station, but it can be a blighted downtown building. It can be an old school, an old hospital, an old dry cleaner business. Lots of different things can qualify as brownfield. Marquette County actually has 287 known sites of environmental contamination. So that obviously, that's your typical facilities. That doesn't include all the blighted and obsolete properties that are in the county. Michigan's pretty progressive when it comes to brownfields, and back in 1995, they changed legislation substantially to try to encourage development on brownfield sites, and the biggest thing that they did at that time was change liability provisions in the law that essentially, prior to 1995, if you came along and wanted to purchase an environmentally contaminated property, you were liable for whatever that previous owner did. In 1995, they changed that such that if you were interested in purchasing a contaminated property, you could get what's called a baseline environmental assessment done. Once you had that baseline environmental assessment that said where that property was at that point in time that you bought it, you're no longer responsible for the acts of prior owners. That's huge. That basically allowed for a lot of this contaminated property to change hands and to be able to be developed. So it's quite unique to Michigan. And as I said, it basically allows property to be bought and sold even though there's contamination on it. It provides protection to the purchaser. At that time, the legislature also enacted law that allows for these brownfield tax increment financing plans, and I'll obviously talk about that in a minute. First, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Marquette County Brownfield Authority. probably all hear about the projects going on in the city. The City Brownfield Authority has been around for quite some time. Marquette City's authority was created in 1998, so it's been around a long time. You're all aware of Founders Landing, Liberty Way, the new hospital, big brownfield plans. The county authority is relatively new, created in 2000 and, to look at my notes, can't remember if it's 9 or 10, 2010. We have an 8-member authority. I handed out our most recent annual report. Can kind of get a feel for the kinds of projects that we work on. It's not maybe as huge as some of the Marquette City brownfield plans. We help a lot of, I don't want to call them mom and pop, that's maybe an old term, but smaller businesses that really need our assistance to get off the ground running. That tends to be more of the types of businesses that we help. Essentially, back in 2010, what happened, it was kind of unique. I should mention too, Negaunee Township does have a brownfield authority, so there's actually 3 in Marquette County. Marquette City, Negaunee Township, and then the countywide authority. Back in 2010, I as treasurer actually foreclosed on an old school building in Ishpeming Township. There was a potential with that site, that school building really needed to be demolished. It was definitely a blighted structure. The roof had collapsed and it was really quite a dangerous situation. And we knew there was a potential for redevelopment for people to build homes on that site. So with a brownfield plan, there was a way through tax increment financing, which I'll talk about in a minute, there was a way to essentially use the taxable value on those new homes and pay for the demolition of that school building. Only problem was Ishpeming Township didn't have a brownfield authority, so there was no mechanism to make it happen. That was actually the project that created or initiated the creation of the Marquette County Brownfield Authority. So we are really there to represent any city or township that doesn't have an authority in place. And we have done a lot of work throughout the county. We have 4 brownfield plans in place today. One that I mentioned in Ishpeming Township, and actually had some parcels in the city of Marquette, believe it or not, in that same plan. One in the city of Negaunee, one in Negaunee Township. Even though they have their own authority, they chose for a variety of reasons to do that project under us. And then one in the city of Ishpeming. We also have one in the works in Forsyth Township, and then the one that you're considering today here in Marquette Township. So one other thing I'll add before we talk about tax increment financing, which I'll try not to overwhelm you with the details, it's kind of complex, but we did receive, the Brownfield Authority, the County Brownfield Authority did receive an EPA grant, $400,000 about 3 years ago for doing site assessment work. So it's for doing phase 1, phase 2 environmental studies, asbestos surveys, all of that work that needs to be done up front before a project can really move forward. A lot of that assessment activity. And so we have funded numerous projects. You'll see that in the annual report, how we've used some of that funding, and we did provide funding to the Northwoods project too. One of the things that EPA likes for us to do when we spend that grant money on a project is to, if there's a chance that there is a brownfield plan, and not every project turns into a brownfield plan, but when there is, they like us to capture that money back so we can create a revolving fund and continue to do work throughout the county when those EPA funds are gone. So that is one component that you'll see in the brownfield plan for the Northwood site. So how does tax increment financing work? Essentially, the whole concept is to put these contaminated or problem sites on a level playing field with a green site. So somebody comes along and they're looking at a contaminated, we'll use a contaminated site as an example. They're coming along and they want to build a pole barn on this contaminated site. They can very easily build it on a green site that has no issues, but they would like to see it on this site. The township would like to see this contaminated site redeveloped, but there are costs associated with developing on that site. There's some soil they need to remove. There's some different costs that make it more expensive for them to develop there versus a green site that doesn't have the contamination. That property has a taxable value, for example, say of $10,000. So the township is getting tax revenue, the county, the state, everybody's getting tax revenue based on that $10,000. This developer wants to come in and create a $500,000 taxable value with the building that they're going to build. The difference between that $10,000 and that $500,000, $490,000, I like to keep these numbers simple for myself, that $490,000 is considered the tax increment. And with a brownfield plan in place, that tax increment can be used to reimburse that developer for those eligible expenses that they may incur with developing at that site. Things like cleaning up the soil. Not every cost is a brownfield eligible cost. The state statute specifically identifies which costs can be brownfield eligible. So with this particular plan, I'll try to kind of walk through it, and I did just hand out kind of a summary with the high points, because I know it's kind of a big, thick document, which is the part that I love, is the little tables in the back that probably nobody can read, but that is the meat and potatoes of these plans. This, of course, is a site that has been sitting for quite some time. We've actually been working with Dan Torres, the former owner, on this site for probably 4+, maybe 4 to 5 years. Dan was familiar with brownfield and how it worked, and he came to us pretty early on. So we've been working with him for a while. He's had a couple people come through interested, and it just didn't pan out. This project has the financial backing. We're pretty excited about it. I have to say, Nick and Marina have really been a dream to work with. They are so organized and really have their heads on straight that it's been really great working with them. Their anticipated investment is about $1.5 million on the site. There's some job creation listed there. As I said, the brownfield plan only allows for certain expenses to be reimbursed to a developer. Those are actually listed on table 1 in the plan, which is the first table in the back. And I just kind of wanted to walk you through what those costs are so you can see what the eligible activities are. Did everybody find table 1? I don't have a number on this page, but so on table 1, it lists all the eligible activities. You can see that they total $200,000. So again, we're talking about a $1.5 million investment. This brownfield plan is a $200,000 brownfield plan. At the top, we talk about some of the assessment activities that I explained were funded with the EPA funds that the brownfield got. So that's all the top part, the phase 1, phase 2 costs totaling $10,800. The next section deals with the developer activities. These would be the costs that the developer is going to get paid back through that tax increment financing. Asbestos abatement, site demolition, and building demolition. That's mainly interior demolition. They can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're planning to keep the structure of that building and the historic nature of the building in place. And then the architect and engineer fees that go along with that. There are administrative costs of the authority. That's essentially my time for monitoring this. It's not exactly straightforward. I do spend a lot of my time administering these plans, especially once the tax revenue starts coming in and making sure everybody's paid accordingly. And then the writing of the brownfield plan itself. And then at the bottom, you can see kind of a summary. It does include capture for, it's called the LBRF. It used to be called the Local Site Remediation Fund, and they changed the name of it recently. That is, the legislation that put brownfield plans in place allows a brownfield authority to capture taxes for an additional 5 years at the end of a brownfield plan. And that funding goes to the brownfield authority to continue doing brownfield work. That's essentially what that is for. So you can see the developer will be reimbursed $111,000 roughly out of that $200,000. Now how this works, there's currently, I gotta look it up here, bear with me. On another one of the tables, there's a current taxable value on that property. It's actually on table 3. And the initial value, so presently today, is $98,700. It's important to point out that the township, the city, the schools, all of the taxing entities continue to collect their taxes on that $98,700. That does not change. So you're not giving up the current revenue that you get from that property. You can see the estimated taxable value, and this is based on information from your assessor who reviewed their plans of what they're planning to build, is $776,500. So the difference between those two numbers, of course, is the capture. That's $677,800. So this is a 13-year plan. Essentially, the owner of that property will pay their taxes every July and December like everybody else does. Instead of that money getting dispersed to the township, to the city, cetera, I'm sorry, township, county, et cetera, those taxes go back to the Brownfield Authority, who disperses it according to the plan. So back to the developer, the authority, for those expenses that are outlined in Table 1. What the Brownfield plan does is it basically calculates how long will that take, and it's estimating that it'll take 13 years. Clear as mud?
Just have a question on the conditional taxable value. That's the base value that will not change.
Correct.
Okay. It's like the TIF. When you start with a TIF, you have a base value and you go forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like a TIF, obviously project-specific with brownfield plans, which is why I kind of like them. Because it's, I mean, you have control, that's why we're here tonight. This is a project-specific plan for your consideration, versus a district like a DDA or something like that. But yeah, it's similar to a base value.
So, do we collect the taxes and forward it to the brownfield?
Yes,
Like, it's a flow-through dollar amount.
yes,
Once we take off the dollars for the 98,700, and the rest goes over to the brownfield.
correct. Yeah, this is a local plan, and what I mean by that, and it really only relates to downtown properties because the state only supports properties in a downtown. I'm not even sure if they consider that Marquette Township had a downtown, they look at traditional downtowns. But you can go to the state to get their approval to capture school operating, the 18 mills that goes to the school. This is not a state plan, this is a local plan only. There is 1 year, if you look at Table 5, there is 1 year that school operating taxes are captured, it's the first year. And that is because for the environmental activities that I talked about, the phase 1, all that assessment work that was done up front, you can actually capture school operating to pay for those expenses. So the amount that's coming back to the Brownfield Authority for those assessment activities is actually coming from the 18 mills. And it doesn't affect the local school district, it's coming from the state school aid fund, their per pupil funding remains the same. But otherwise, this is a local plan, so you're really talking county, township, and ISD villages that are being diverted.
What about the bond and indebtedness of the schools? Is that captured, or is that?
Brownfield plans can't capture any debt. So if you even had a library debt millage or something like that, they can't capture debt. It can capture sinking fund, but I don't believe Marquette Schools has a sinking fund, if I'm not mistaken. I didn't see that in here. It does capture the ISD and the special ed millages.
Excuse me. Thank you for talking about. Thank you for talking to me this afternoon about trying to explain this to me. But after 13 years, then it goes right back. You know, that the difference is stopped after 13 years, and
Yes.
it's reassessed, and then they're taxed on the reassessment, correct?
Yes, and they're taxed under that new assessment all along. It's just that how those funds are dispersed for those 13 years is not normal. It's going back through the Brownfield plan to reimburse everybody. But right after the 13 years, the township starts collecting taxes on that higher value. And that's kind of the whole argument for Brownfield redevelopment, because if not for the Brownfield incentive, the township would stay at that 98,000 for potentially 50 to 100 years. So in this case, we're saying without this Brownfield incentive, that development may not ever occur. So that increase is actually, you know, you're giving it up for 13 years, but in the end, you're going to reap the benefits out into, you know, the long-term future on that increased value. So that's kind of the whole I guess soapbox speech that folks give when they're talking about Brownfield and why it's important.
And would they be able to file for dark store issues?
You know, I think anybody can file for a dark store reduction at any point in time. You know, they're here, they can answer that question, but I think you'll see that we don't have corporate America sitting in the third row here. We've got two local people who, you know, are trying to start a small business.
So Ann, what happens in two cases where they can't make it go, or they decide to sell it as a successful business? Does the Brownfield stop then, once
If
that
they- no,
transition happens?
If they sold it, the Brownfield plan would continue. But it's a good point about what if it doesn't happen. And this is why, I mean, I'm a pretty conservative girl. I'm a county treasurer. And the beauty of Brownfield and why I love it so much is the risk is all on the developer. If they don't build what they say they're going to build, they don't get reimbursed. I mean, it's kind of as simple as that. So when we review these projects, it's really kind of easy for the Brownfield Authority because the risk is truly all on them. If they don't do what they say they're gonna do in the plan, they don't get the money back. If they don't pay the taxes, they don't get reimbursed. So that's kind of, it's a good point, and it's why I really like Brownfield financing, because the risk really isn't on us, it's on the developer.
And then how about if it's sold?
If it's
At any point
sold,
in the 13 years?
it's not contingent on them as the owner. If it's sold, the property is in a brownfield plan. So however that property is taxed, be it under Nick and Marina's ownership or somebody else's ownership, if this brownfield plan is in place, it will still apply.
Thanks.
Could you talk a little bit about the 13-year, how the 13 years is arrived at?
Sure, it's all mathematical. So, basically, when I talked about table one, they come up with all the eligible expenses, and it added up to $200,000. Then they brought their plans into Dulcie here at the township and said, hey, this is what we're looking to build. Can you come up with an estimated future taxable value? So she comes up with the estimated future taxable value. You figure out that tax increment, and you look at the millage rates, and you basically determine how long will it take under those millage rates to pay back that $200,000. And that is, it really, the years is the outcome of the brownfield plan. It's all a
And
calculation
of
to
the
figure
numbers?
it out.
Yeah,
Mhm.
okay, thank you.
If the value of the property changes over that 13 years, whether it be through a dark store petition or whatever, and it lowers significantly, does that extend the 13-year plan
Yes.
out until it's captured?
Yes. You know, and when Pete asked me on the phone, well, could they go to the tax tribunal to get the value reduced? I said, well, I imagine they could, but they'd be pretty foolish to do that, because all it would do is extend the time frame that they get paid back.
Can they accelerate the payment then, too?
Yeah, and that's a good point, and they can maybe address that themselves, but I think this plan is pretty conservative. They actually have a second phase planned for the property. If that second phase goes through, they anticipate this taxable value will increase substantially. So this is a pretty conservative plan. And you know, with the other brownfield plans that we've worked at, you know, I'll use the Teal Lake Senior Living Assisted Facility in the city of Negaunee, for example. The value came in higher when the assessor did the final assessment on that property than was originally estimated. Not hugely higher, but a bit higher. And so that plan actually is a shorter time frame than what we had anticipated. So that can happen. Lots of things can happen. Millage rates change, you know, those change every year, as you know. You know, we assume an inflationary factor in here for taxable value. That could be different. So there's a lot of assumptions made. It really is a budgetary plan.
Additional question, when you're going to table one, you got down the additional capture for the LBRF. What's that time frame for that?
It's 5 years.
That-
5 years at the end of the plan.
So when the plan ends at 13, you got another 5 years to capture.
Yep.
That got a mathematical figure as to how much you're gonna capture within that time, or you capture
It's
it all?
just based on whatever the value is at that time and whatever the millage rates are.
So it goes for another 5 years before we as a township can
Yes.
capture that dollars.
Yes.
So really, we're talking 18 years.
No, it's 13 with that.
Well, 13 with that?
Mhm. Mhm.
Okay.
Let me double check, but I believe so. Yeah, because the table five's my favorite table. That's what spells everything out. But yeah, table 5 goes to 2030 and it has those 5 years in it.
So those, okay. When I looked at that, looking at additional 5 years or so over and above the 13, so, okay.
And when they, say if they add on to the taxes are figured, the appraisal will go back, Darcy will go over there and they'll work with her and figure what the expansion would be, then that would be added to the tax. Say, your tax is now at $10,000. If they add on, so you can add on 5,000 to that, and, right? Am I
Right.
correct in that?
Right, and we would capture that additional, which, like I said, would shorten the plan if that were to happen.
Okay.
Now, they have to turn in the status of where they're at before they get reimbursed? How does that work?
It's totally based on their payment of the taxes. And it works a variety of different ways in different municipalities. Dulcie's pretty sharp, so I bet she'll figure out how to just automate the whole thing. You can set it up in the tax software, to automatically disperse that way. Some of the cities and townships, it's a little more of a complicated brownfield plan, so they actually tell me when, they send me a receipt when the taxes are paid, and then I manually go calculate it and send them the support and tell them how to modify their disbursement to disperse it correctly.
Maybe in the BSA software.
Yes, yeah. And it is possible, I know the city of Marquette has it all right in DSNA where it will automatically calculate. This is a pretty simple brownfield plan, so I'm assuming we can make that happen, so it'll be easier on Dulcie and easier on me that way.
And the area that we're sitting in right now, wasn't that some type of a brownfield, wasn't DDA or something like that?
DDA,
Wasn't it?
tax increment financing.
It was similar to what the brownfield is?
Ballpark.
So this whole area right here was,
DDAs are more like
Yeah.
district-wide and
Yep. It was a district.
kind of once you create them, they go on into eternity.
But the
Brownfield
principle is
plans
the
are
same.
more project-specific.
What's the downside?
Well, I mean, some of the folks, I think, were questioning, why would we give up all this tax revenue? I mean, that would be the downside, but I guess it's whether you take a long-term approach on development or, you know, a shorter-term approach, and question the risk of, if you don't support these kinds of projects, will they happen? You know, I think that's the, you know, are you willing to, support the brownfield plan such that that development will occur, and 20 years from now, you'll really reap the rewards of that development. And, you know, as Jason said, hopefully it spurs other development as well. You are blessed here in Marquette Township. I don't think you have quite as many brownfield sites as some of the other townships have, so that's, you know, that's great. But I think this one's probably been at the top of a lot of people's radars for many, many years, so it'd be, and of the plans that I've seen through the years, this is a great plan to not only do something wonderful with that building, but preserve it too, versus in some of the plans we're talking about demoing parts of it and splitting it into two and lots of different creative things, but this is kind of nice that it'll preserve. I went on my first date in that building with my husband. I mean, you know, there's some history there.
Yeah, my wedding was there, I know.
I think some of the caution, the caution on our side is that we've been through so much of the tax drive, and we've been hit very hard.
Sure.
And now we're questioning about infrastructure, can we afford this, can we continue our plans, long-range plans, you know, so that's, we're looking from it at that standpoint, how much we're gonna
Sure.
lose, you know, even though there's a potential of gaining in 13 years, but I won't be here to go have a beer there, so. But that's the caution on our side.
Sure, that's understandable.
But I think when you look at right now, it's, the taxable value is 98,700. We do nothing, that figure is gonna continually go down in that.
Right.
So right now, it's staying at 98.7, we're gonna continue to get that for
13 years.
13 years. And we have the project, once it's done, all of a sudden it's gonna jump up in that. So we're not gonna lose anything, we're actually gonna maintain what we have got.
Unless they add to it, if they add on.
And it will encourage the property adjacent to it to be utilized.
Dave, did you have something?
Let's assume for a minute that the brownfield plan is approved and the work commences, and for whatever reason, it never is finished. Is the reimbursement still go for the work that has been done? the
No,
project is
because
not
if the
done?
taxable value increase isn't there, there's nothing to capture. There has to be a tax increment in order to reimburse. So if they don't do anything with it and the assessor doesn't increase that value, then there's nothing to capture. So again, you kind of go back to that, the risk's all on them to do what they say they're going to do.
I guess what I'm trying to outline is a scenario where it's well underway, it just never gets finished before problems set in, and it therefore doesn't get completely finished by the plan. Is the money that has been qualified for that plan, does that get repaid through the plan, or does the plan stop?
I would say, I mean, if they created the tax increment and there's tax increment to capture, then yes, it would pay back those entities outlined.
So any
in
tax
the-
increase in excess of where it stands right now would be captured.
I didn't quite.
Any tax increase in the property in excess of where it is now would be captured and used to pay those expenses.
Yeah, I think that would be accurate to say that.
Anything else for Ann? Oh, Jace, yes,
Just in my opinion, if this gets built,
yes. We can hear you on the record better.
You should say when it gets.
hello, Marquette. In my opinion, if this gets built, it's gonna spur development along that entire road area. You have the Iron Ore Heritage Trail there. It's all commercially zoned. You have some residential dwellings there, but I think the commercial value of that, and you see it everywhere. I just got back from Detroit this weekend, and believe it or not, there is a ton of development going on down there. And it happens in little pockets where people are investing. And this is a tool that planners use, that counties use to help facilitate development. And what you'll see, especially, I mean, you guys are financed, right? You're guaranteed you can provide the township proof of that, right? Okay, so they're not looking to, I mean, they're all in. And so if something like of this quality, I mean, in the tasteful design that went into this gets built, you're gonna see some interest in the surrounding properties. And that may occur before the 13 years is up, in my opinion. So it's a little bit of give and take, I think. But I think the upside is that, you know, if you're familiar with Northwoods Road, which I am, there are properties available, and I think there's a lot of potential for future development surrounding that, and that being essentially the hub and other types of supporting types of businesses being developed there, recreation oriented or otherwise. That's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jace. So the first question I believe we have then is the resolution to support the plan. Computer back up.
Cushman Township Fire, 131% no response. Center 581. Gonna be just like Tony's Lane at the cash store. There is a tremor.
I didn't remember seeing an actual motion, so just the resolution.
We have two parts of this, do we not?
Looks like just one resolution. Hey, Randy, did you type this up, or would Ann have supplied it?
It
Resolution?
came with the plan. Yeah.
The single document, correct?
Okay. Just one.
Front page and back page.
Yeah.
Front page is just who's present and who made the motion and that.
Oh, okay.
Have anything to say?
Yeah, that we could do that. This is not planning, but did you want us make any comments or say anything, you folks? Sure, yeah. Usually that's what we do at planning, but it's okay here. Thanks,
So
Pete.
thanks for having us, letting us make a comment. I'm Nick, this is Marina, this is Max. Max has an older sister, Ruby, who's at her Aunt Mandy's house right now. So, you know, I think that I understand the, you know, a little bit of hesitation maybe, in, you know, sort of declining some tax revenue for the next few years. A few reasons why this is important to our project is really to get to a higher taxable value sooner. Having this money come back to us to go into the further development of the second phase for the event space, being able to take on employees and grow a little more sturdily, I guess, is really important to us, getting to a point where our property is of even greater value therefore the township would be having even greater tax revenue. I think that, you know, we went through this process to create this plan because we knew that we had a property that really fit this notion of, you know, it's not going anywhere unless somebody can take the initiative to figure out how to make it into something of value. And we really want to restore a historical place versus a brand new development, which arguably could have been easier and cheaper. Any comments you want to make, Reggie?
No, I think I'll just echo Nick that I understand your concern about the dark store issue, and I think that's very healthy. Certainly, I know that has a lot of ramifications, and one of which, I mean, we are heavy users of the library as a young family, and that's, we've seen the impact to the library that it's had, as well as other entities, and so that's not something that we would ever want to inflict through our project. We hope to only be a good neighbor moving forward, and I appreciate your question too about selling. It was a stumper because it's not anything that we've ever even considered that we would sell the building or the business. So we're excited. It really is a passion project for us. And we know it has a special place in this community. And so we're looking forward to bringing it back to its glory, and hopefully we can have your support in this project.
Thank you.
I'll make the motion.
Well, do we, Ernie?
I'll make the motion to support the brownfield pursuit. I don't even know what the motion should really be wording at
It's
this
actually a
point.
resolution.
Just to support the resolution,
Support the resolution as presented and that?
I'll support.
Motion and support. Any other comments, suggestions? Nope. Need a roll call vote.
Treasurer Johnson,
Yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand,
Yes.
Trustee Everson,
Yes.
Trustee Marks,
Yes.
Supervisor Durant,
Yes.
motion carries.
Get your checkbook out. We're coming tonight, too.
Oh, anytime.
When do you anticipate breaking ground?
March, finalizing plans and getting bids in the next couple weeks, and starting with the very things that apply to this plan, which is demolition, asbestos abatement, that sort of thing.
I'm happy for you. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you very much.
And just so
Hopefully
you
we'll be
all,
drinking beer this summer.
Just so you all know too, because this is a county plan, it does go to the county board of commissioners next for their approval. I highly doubt with township concurrence that they would ever not approve a plan, but there is one more step to that process. If you happen to read about that, that's why.
And I think we'll be seeing you guys in a couple weeks here for another, hopefully, approval. Special use.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Actually, the planning
Thank you.
commission.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ann. Good education. Okay, we don't have a forum discussion. We're going to go to the DDA update, which is the Parsons Brinkerhoff corridor study. You're leaving and Randy's gonna take over?
Go ahead.
Whatever.
Jump on it.
Do you have that on that email too, Jason? You want to
Just
go?
some photos, yeah.
Okay. Pull that up here. Which one do you want on there?
I don't think it matters.
The one looking west of Commerce,
Which is?
the most effective one, I think.
Just throw one up and he'll deal with it.
Revised, it says.
Okay.
There you go.
So the DDA has become active again, and one of the things, or the impetus for this corridor study, was the fact that in 2021 and 2019 and 2021, two major highway projects are occurring in our community. In 2019, the center Grassy median will be extended from the US 41 and County Road HQ intersection, commonly referred to as the Target Walmart intersection. That'll be extended west, out probably past Best Buy. And Michigan lefts will be strategically placed to help alleviate some of the traffic accidents that have happened out there. But it's also a way to help capture some more stormwater. As a component of that, and the 2021 project, which takes the resurfacing project from Commerce intersection and goes all the way out to east to the roundabout at US 41 when you're coming into Marquette. We wanted to see if there was an opportunity to improve pedestrian safety, aesthetics, and lighting in the corridor, and to parlay those two MDOT projects into something that could be a little bit more than that. MDOT only has the money to do the resurfacing portion of the project, so can we as a community or as a downtown development authority, with all of our private and public partners, can we do something and raise some money or go after some grants and improve the corridor along with and while MDOT is mobilized in that area. So this study that you're seeing probably for the first time tonight was commissioned in fall of 2016 by the DDA, and it was funded by a one-time, one-year capture of a 1 mil DDA levy, the existing DDA. So one of the other things that the township's looking at, or the DDA is looking at, is expanding the boundary of the authority to capture businesses that are further out west and that have placed themselves or developed since the initial DDA was formed. And that actually, if that was to occur, there would be a lot more help, if you will, in helping to, I guess, in essence, pay for some of this, should the township move forward with some kind of levy on the DDA. And that money can be used for engineering, can be used for a number of different things. Some of those will be more finely detailed by Attorney Zappa, but we're hoping that the township board will be supportive of several or all of these components. So as you'll see in this image here, we used our new drone and we threw it up in the corridor and we took some images, and then we sent those images down to our Parsons Rinkerhoff consultant team. And these guys do traffic engineering all day long. This is what they do. So they are very well versed in engineering of traffic issues and safety. And so one of the main things, and Mr. Springer and I talk about this all the time, is to have something that's a visual that you can show people to tell your story to prospective grant opportunities. And so here you'll see a separated pathway on both sides of the corridor. Now, keep in mind, folks, this is all very conceptual, okay? So this is just what potentially could look like. So you're looking at Commerce Drive up in the air, looking west towards the new developments out west. So you see separated pathways on both sides of the road. You see some tree plantings there. And you see here, the center median is always something that we're trying to get mowed in the summer, and it's just kind of a nebulous area, I guess. But what we try to do is to install some rain gardens, things that aesthetically look nice. They can be salt and cold weather resistant, so that means they'll come back and they'll grow each year, and it'll dress up. I always consider this to be our front porch, and how can we dress up our front porch? So this is a conceptual look at what potentially that could look like. And the beauty of it is that the right-of-way, according to MDOT, is wide enough to accommodate all of this without having to acquire more property. Can you go to the next picture, Clerk Rattari, which would be the, yes. So this shows a conceptual design of what it could potentially look like with a separated pathway in front of Art Van along that section, the southern portion of the right-of-way. We likely will not have concrete pavers for 2.7 miles. That would be far too expensive. But we can, keep in mind this is a draft, so we need all of your comments along with the road committee and the DDA to go back to Parsons Brinkerhoff so they can take our comments and then revise these. In my opinion, I think a separated asphalt path similar to what Chocolate Township has done would be very sufficient, as long as it's 6 feet wide, because that's the handicap accessibility requirement for width, at least 6. You also see in this image lighting, although maybe not the most attractive lighting post here, just a wooden post, but you can see lighting heads on each side, one lighting the pathway and the other one lighting the roadway. Benches and amenities, and it wouldn't be complete without somebody on their cell phone looking down, not paying attention, I guess. But so that's 2 aspects. And then if you go to the third photo, and again, this is all conceptual, but it's nice to have something to look at. This here is the west end, and then this is the east end. This is the Target Walmart intersection, HQ and 41. And this is the former ProBuild site, which is now scheduled to be a nice, shiny new Honda Toyota dealership by Riverside. And this here is the entrance into Menards. One of the other aspects that we've been working on is how to, I guess, diversify and incur more recreation and tourism. This could be accomplished by punching a box culvert under the highway and connecting the Iron Ore Heritage Trail to the south trails, which you see down on the map on the wall, to the north trails, which are up north, via the Iron Ore Heritage Trail and a safe passage under the highway. Snowmobiles, ATVs, everybody would have a safe passage. Right now we have snowmobiles going over the highway, as you know. Menards has been very nice to work with. They see the benefit of having, recreation easements, and they know about the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, and we have good relations with them. This would be a little bit more expensive of a project, but it's a legacy project. If you're able to do that, you can connect virtually Big Bay, Ishpeming, all of that with a safe passage under the highway, connecting to the Iron Ore Heritage Trail, which really serves as the backbone for all of these proposed future connections of our non-motorized trail system. This is estimated to be at about $2 million. Any kind of match would be in the 25% range, which means that we would need to come up with $500,000. And I told the DDA and the board at their joint meeting today that I feel that that is a tangible number. When you look at multiple grant opportunities and the amount of interest that is in this piece of infrastructure. In the Cayman Island Trail Network, the snowmobile clubs, ATVs, everybody, since this project, has kind of been loosely talked about since I started here in 2011, people are interested in this. It's not just, and the authority is too. The Iron Ore Heritage Authority is interested in that as well. I feel that it's our job and the DDA's job to bring you progressive projects for you to consider. And so, again, these are very conceptual designs. They are in draft form. They are here for your scrutiny and your comment. The last page of the study here, the draft study, has a summary attached to it. And we looked at roadway lighting, non-motorized pathways, and grade-separated crossings. Some of the comments from the initial DDA review were that we should consider continuous lighting along the corridor, although based on their research, it wasn't necessarily warranted because approximately 75% of the crashes that happened in the corridor happened during the day. We have had fatalities that occurred by people trying to cross the highway median, but those unfortunately involved alcohol. You still have to take those into consideration. Obviously, lighting may have helped, but their recommendation was to implement a partial lighting strategy at signalized intersections. So right now we have Commerce, in 41, the intersection at HQ in 41, and the other signalized intersection right now is the Brickyard in 41. Pathways, on the other hand, if you do have pedestrian pathways, those are suggested to be continuously lit. And those can be done with staggered lighting. They're not as tall, they're not as expensive. But all of these things obviously cost money, and those will be things that you'll have to, look through. There is room to install the non-motorized pathway on both sides of the road, and there are some costs associated with this, obviously. And these will be further broken down when the final plan is done. In fact, we have a meeting scheduled, I think, was it Wednesday?
Monday.
Monday. And we've invited the Board of Light and Power and our MDOT representatives to give us some more definitive, per linear foot, basically what that would cost, whether we go on one side of the highway or the other side. And then a grade separated crossing. We talked about this one here, just east of the Menards driveway. This is kind of the Cadillac version of a safe crossing. But as you remember, in Chocolate Township a number of years ago, there was a pedestrian walkway over the top, and probably a better example nowadays is the one that is featured on South McClellan near the school. That one's kind of incorporated into the bike path where it's, you're not climbing upstairs, you're just basically using a rampway. That was discussed at the DDA meeting because we feel that perhaps on the east end, down where the hotels and the restaurants are, the smaller businesses, if you will, and happen to be the site of the unfortunate fatalities, that could potentially be an area where we could maybe use another crossing. So, Manager Gerard, do you have anything you want to add?
Well, just to remind board members that for almost all of the time since Kmart first came into Marquette Township back many, many years ago, the condition of the US 41 corridor has been of a concern. What do we do? How do we keep it clean? How do we maintain the weeds that are growing in the median? Because it becomes a trash basin. It's continually collecting bags, paper bags, plastic bags, trash, a variety of things. So it's been a continuing discussion item, and the genesis for all of this was a DDA meeting. And as you know, we have members on all of our committees that cross. There are members on cross committees. A discussion came up about the MDOT projects that were coming up. Representatives that are on the DDA who are also on the Recreation Committee as well as on the Road Committee raised the point that, hey, we've been talking about, the individual committees have been talking about these issues for quite some time. We have individual projects that we've been talking about that we might want to consider. Maybe it's time that we all meet together. So we did. The DDA then, as the Independent Authority, commissioned a joint group, basically, with representatives of the DDA, representatives of the Recreation Committee and the Roads Committee, and set up a meeting with Board of Light and Power and with MDOT, the folks that are involved and would be involved in the projects that were being considered. And out of that discussion came, obviously, the conclusion that we needed some numbers and we needed some data and information. And that's where this study came from. The DDA made the recommendation to the board that the board authorized them to do two things: move forward with expansion of the DDA to include those areas that, when the original DDA was established, were not envisioned as development areas, which now are development areas and are contiguous. And the second thing was to commission this study. We went and got quotations, and the board supported the DDA request for authorization to levy $1 million for 1 year that would generate the revenue to pay for this study, pre-funded by the general fund to be reimbursed following the collection of the taxes here in early 2017. And that's how we got here. And basically, Parsons Brinkerhoff was selected. We did not go through a bidding process. They were selected because they had been the entity, the agency that did the work for MDOT and for the Road Commission when the Marquette General was looking at relocating out here into the township. They did the traffic studies. They did the potential development studies and had already amassed some of this information. So that reduced our cost, basically, for this study. This is a draft that came back from them. It has been reviewed by the DDA last week, a week ago. It was shared with representatives of the board of the Marquette Township Business Association this afternoon, and this is the first time that you've actually seen it. It is a working document. We have scheduled a follow-up joint committee meeting for Monday the 23rd at 5:30 to get back together with the representatives from the BLP and MDOT to see how these plans may blend in with those 19 and 21 projects, and what kind of time frame and cost structure might we be looking at for things like lighting and connecting crossways. So it's important to bring those people into that discussion, because they will be the ones that will be doing the ultimate design for us for lighting, as a for instance, and relocation of utilities. So that's where we're at. This is an update basically for you. It will be coming back to you. We have made the commitment to the businesses in the community that once we get to the point of having better information in terms of actual cost dollars and projected cost dollars and time frames that it may take to accomplish some of these items, to get back with them for their input prior to it coming back to you.
Roger, you've done a little research too, or are you at that point yet? Do you have anything that you want to add, or comments, or
Well, we have
things
talked
we need to
about
consider?
the steps necessary to complete the expansion if you want to do that.
Yep.
And we've changed the boundaries of the DDA several times over the years, going back to the early 1990s.
But it is the same process to modify as it was to establish. I mean, just kind of
Essentially.
essentially. So we have a series of public hearings and those things that need to be done, and this report and the data figures into those meetings.
Go ahead, Pete.
Jason, when you're talking to MDOT and that, can you emphasize the importance of maintenance in our corridor? Usually it's twice a year they cut the grass, and it's just not acceptable anymore to have something like that done.
It's actually not MDOT that cuts the grass, it's the county road committee.
Yeah, they do.
I know that, but
Under contract.
there's not in any of their plans that push towards that, to push the county to do a better job.
Yeah,
Well,
the
what are-
beauty of planning nowadays with MDOT is that they require public comment and public buy-in to their projects. So this is where I see the big opportunity. We have committees, road, rec, we have a township board, we have a DDA, we have a township business association. For the most part, since I've been here, these improvements are pretty much in lockstep with what has been the desire for a number of years. Retro planning a corridor is very difficult to do, but if you have, an active community base and committee base, you can really get a lot done and generate a lot of support. One of the things, to answer your question, yes, we're going to have to maintain those walkways if they're put in, of course, but MDOT, if they're within the right-of-way, and the County Road Commission as their kind of subcontractor, if you will, on maintenance, should be a part of that discussion, and likely, hopefully, they will accept responsibility for a portion of that, so that that's not an a continued cost that we have to deal with, as Trustee Marks mentioned earlier today. I also wanted to point out that MDOT's not just doing the road resurfacing project. I mean, it is a road resurfacing project, but they will also be working on access management principles, consolidating driveways, trying to get businesses to work together to share driveways. There's so many along, especially east of, and on the north side, east of the Commerce intersection. There's a real opportunity there to install deceleration lanes, acceleration lanes, and to improve the safety there. And they are looking into that already as part of their design. So, we had a lot of success with our road rehabilitation project, and I think that was because we invited the public to those meetings. We were able to tell them when and where their projects were going to be done and how they were going to be done. And I think people generally supported that. In my opinion, we would be doing the same thing with the business community. Invite them in, try to get some buy-in on this project, and perhaps even fundraise with them. We have some major players coming to the township, including Meyer, who are always looking to, help communities out that I'm aware of, that they go into communities, they really like to help out with projects that are in need. And in fact, I've been told that from their real estate representative. So I think there's an opportunity. There's a lot of partners, both public and private, that are available to us. We have a lot of, I guess, word of mouth support for this project and any of the components. But we have to be able to say, look, if the DDA is going to invest in some fashion in this project, and perhaps use some of their money as match money, if that's allowable, and for engineering purposes, what is the product that we're going to deliver to them, and is it worth their, time and money to do so? And then what is the township board willing to, I guess, absorb as a component? My goal would be to, write some major grants, and obviously we're advertising for a staff planner right now to take over some of the duties that I do now, so that we could focus on some of these major projects in the next couple of years. This will be very work intensive to get aid, to get grants in place, even to apply for grants really, but to sit down with people that are interested in this project, all the players, MDOT, County Road Commission, federal funding, and see what's out there, and then, with the board's blessing, see what we can come up with for you to consider.
And we have to remember too that this is for the public too. It's not just a business venture. So when we start having meetings and whatever kind of public hearings or open houses or whatever you want to call them, visitation, it's for public input too, because it will impact the movability of the township and how we move around this area.
Yeah, I think
So
that's a
it
critical.
isn't just about the businesses either.
Yeah, and I think that is of critical importance, because basically everything that we're doing or talking about doing or attempting to do to improve the corridor through the township makes life easier for the 34,000 cars a day that go through it. And there aren't 34,000 people living in the township.
Yeah, it's a great time to be a planner in the township. There's lots of opportunity. MDOT has reached out and said that they will co-sponsor any traffic alternatives grant that is run through the state. They can't apply for it on our behalf, but they can co-sponsor a grant for us, and they said that they would do that. There's also federal funding out there for safety. There's recreation opportunities too. We talked to Mary Carlock at a grant workshop last week, and she really liked the picture of the pedestrian underpass, and thought that that would be a shoe-in for a development grant because of the state's and the governor's mandate on the trail system. And we're so blessed to have the Iron Ore Heritage Trail run through. I mean, you got a 48-mile non-motorized except for December to April pathway to spur off of or connect to. So if we can get people off of the Iron Ore Heritage Trail and into the business community, and to use that as a selling point for some of these projects, I think that will go a long way. And then just general, good community development involves pathways for people. Non-motorized accessibility is a huge component of community development, and something that we're getting better at, but we could be much better with a project like this. In connecting our north and south business community to the residences. It's just a great opportunity, and I'm anxious to see what we can come up with for you guys to consider.
Jason, when you're talking in your meetings and that, with MDOT and all the rest of them, do they have any plans that I asked you this afternoon a little bit about busing stopping on the highway or off the side, or do they make a little, pull out there for busing? Because we want the people to shop, or businesses and right along here, the whole stretch. And it don't work out when you just have to go to a back of a building and dump it. You have to be right in front. I watch it when I would go out of town. I ride the bus, and I watch how they go, how they do. They stop right alongside the street, and they maintain. They take a person from here. He went 5 blocks, this guy, and got off to another store. And I said, I think if there any possibility of widening it a little bit or making a spot for it, I think we get more support from the business association, because we're trying to do something for them to also, and get the people to shop. And we're talking about shop, live, and play in our township. So I'd be kind of interested what their ideas on that are.
I will certainly research what is available for mass transit, and see if there's a way to further accommodate their mobility in the
Yeah,
township.
because,
as
you
well.
know, we want people to be walking, and busing, riding their bike and that. you know. So it's stretched out a little bit, what is it, 2.5 miles or something like that?
2.7.
2.7, you know. Why can't they go from one end to the other end and do what they want to do and get off and go into trailers and go home? So, all right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
So this is just an informational, we don't have to do anything right now. The DDA will meet, like he said, it's actually the ad hoc committee that'll meet Monday night, and see where they want to go with that. Get some little bit more information, prices and stuff like that. Okay? Yeah, Dave.
Just, Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, we're probably a good year away from making a go or no-go decision on this, at least a year. By the time we get all of an idea of what grants are available out there that could be applied for and how much this is actually gonna cost.
That's
So for the
true.
board to actually make a decision on this, whether it's gonna be no-go or quite a ways out yet. There's a
Yeah,
lot of
maybe
work that has to
by
be done
fall.
between.
Right, yeah, and, you know, sometimes when you throw pictures like that, or one ends up in the paper tomorrow, you know, it's a great thing, and I have it sitting on, I have it taped to my desk, because it's a goal. You know, it's something that you want to do, and you're hopeful that you can do it. But nothing's happened yet, okay? And I don't want anybody to get spooked because there's some grand plans here. We have to put prices to this. We have to research the feasibility financially through future maintenance. We have to take into all your concerns. And the points that were brought up tonight and earlier today were great points. And we will report back to Parsons Brinkerhoff and let them know that, you know, we want this to be part of our plan. We're concerned about future maintenance. We're concerned about snow plowing and maintaining the infrastructure if we install it. But the flip side of that is this is the fun part of the job, when you get to, you know, help promote and bring people together and try to get a consensus on a vision so that you can move forward. To answer Trustee Wiegand's questions, the MDOT granting review team, they meet once a quarter right now. And if you're successful in a grant, they can give you a place marker so that if your project isn't until 2019, but you get awarded in the fourth quarter of 17 or the first quarter of 18, you will have a placeholder for your money, if you're successful, into when the 19 project happens. You know, another reason why we feel that this is the right time is because there's going to be a lot of construction going on in the community. I know because I was involved in a major project in National Wisconsin that was almost at the same caliber, and it was devastating for a summer. But in the end, it was a very, very impressive project and a really good use of public dollars. Where else is I going with that? If everybody's going to be mobilized, now's the time to do it. We brought that example up with, you know, installing utilities or redoing a road and adding a little bit wider shoulder now rather than going back later and doing it. Or, you know, you don't want to put in a new road and then need to replace utilities in 5 years. So these are all reasons why the time is right. And if you can piggyback some of these projects onto the MDOT projects, then it's going to be even a further cost savings for us. And again, I just see it as a good opportunity, but it's up to you. We bring you things, you know, that we think are good ideas, but you as the legislative body of the township need to make a determination on whether or not it's feasible and doable. So we'll do our best to bring you the best information to make those decisions on moving forward.
Thanks, Jason.
Yes, ma'am.
Appreciate it. Well, we have more discussion now with the next item of the 2017 fee schedule. Kirk is here to answer some questions. I will preface it a little bit. I gave you a packet today, and I know it was kind of last minute, but we were so wrapped up with the strategic planning last week that we kind of lost this week. But I did it because in our discussion during the budget, we were trying to figure out how to balance the rates, obviously to support our public works system. We have to do it with the money we collect. One of the topics that we have constantly with budget discussions with Public Works is, how much do we raise the rates? Do they go up this year, do they go down? What do we do with these fees? What do we do with that fee? And it gets to be kind of a battle. So one of the points that came out, and I believe Kirk suggested it, or because of the work he was doing with Paul at the time, and if you remember, we had the gentleman on the speaker, the last meeting, explaining some of this to us. It's my recommendation that we consider making our debt payment, that's not the right word. Help me, Kirk. Debt.
Well, it is a debt payment, yes.
Yeah, I guess it is. Encompassing it into one number. Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Just give you just the highlights. When the road project began, we knew we were going to be investing some money in infrastructure because those roads were going to be ripped up. We ended up investing cash, okay, that took from, and if you want to use your little books, actually, page 4. This is where some of our cash came from. These projects, the replacement or the re-improvements or both or one or either, this is where some of our cash came from. We have $300 and some thousand that we budget for these projects, and we use the cash, which is not bad or wrong. It's just we had that opportunity, okay? In the mix of that, we also discovered during the budget sessions that unlike the general fund that delineates the principal and interest of our debt, the Public Works part of the budget did not. It only accounted for interest. And again, those principal payments were paid obviously every year, but they were coming out of cash. They weren't being budgeted. So, over the course of the last 4 weeks in our discussion and finishing the budget, there's about a $400,000 difference that we need to recoup, I guess would be a good word, for the cash that we've spent, and to allow us to continue to fund the replacement and improvement accounts at that $300 and some thousand level. So part of the suggestion was, if we have this amount of debt we need to make sure we pay off every month or every year or however often the payments are, let's just make it a static number. Instead of raising the rates 5 cents or 2 cents or $1 or whatever it is, because we have increased debt, whether it's intentional debt or in this case using cash. So Kirk's worked up a couple different spreadsheets, and he went through, with his consultant, and as a result, to learn more about the system, I put this little booklet together. The first page basically just gives you our debt, and we didn't have that really detailed very clearly, because again, it wasn't in the budget. And these are rounded, really, really rounded numbers, just to make it easy. I did just list the pump stations and the tanks on the side. This is just for your reference so that you're kind of familiar with it. The bottom part of that first page shows you how to calculate a bill. For some of our new board members, they don't know that there's a base rate and how the gallons are divided by 1,000 and then multiplied times the water rate or the sewer rate. So this steps you through. It shows you exactly what the bill is, and then the bill is on page 2. So you know that those numbers are going to come out. You can tell the bill is $104.63. So again, this is just a tool for you, and I did mention on here the debt off to the side on the water and the sewer, what those amounts were, $280,000 a year. So again, this is, and we used sewer and we used wastewater, those two words back and forth, but they're the same thing. And this is based on a 3/4 inch line. So that's page 1 and 2. What I also didn't realize is that we actually have, I guess you'd say, 4 different ways of calculating not only the operation rate, but the debt rate and the base rate. I thought we had just one. So I don't know how many hours Kirk and I spent trying to go through this, and I'd write it up and I'd say, is this right? Nope, you got it wrong. Okay, go look it again. So I said, that's it. We're putting it in a little chart for you guys to figure out. And, spreadsheets are great if you can understand them, but this is just a listing. And some of this is in your budget. If you look at your fee schedule, this is what's in there. So that helps explain it a little bit more. So then page 4 is your replacement improvement account. Page 5, I asked him to just give me a list of what we've got going on. So you can see the phase 2, that's done, the South Vandenboom. And he had been talking about the US 41 sanitary interceptors for a while. The asset management program, those are again some of what was on the previous page. That's all the wastewater side, the water side. You've got South Vandenboom again. So that kind of gives you just a little snapshot of what we've got going on in this year and next year. And then the last page, we had Kirk and his bookkeeper put together just a nice little information chart for you. If somebody says to you, I'm going to be using $10,000 or 10,000 gallons a year or month, excuse me. There's the calculation right across. Their bill is going to be $238.40. So I just thought this would be a good little booklet for you to keep. You can update it if you want. If you want to throw it away, that's fine. It's got some pockets. You can just make it your Public Works information booklet. But back to that debt idea. Oh, Kirk's got some recommendations. I'll let him take over. But I want you to think about using that number, that debt service number. In this case, I think it's $15 is what he finally came up with. And the purpose for that is if we have $400,000, let's say, worth of debt we need to capture in a year to pay. If we try tying that to rates, and I used this as an example last meeting, if I use 80,000 gallons one month and 150,000 gallons the next month, the second month, yeah, you're going to capture more money, but you're not the first month. So now we've got a shortfall to deal with. If we know we have a static number for debt that we need to capture, let's just make it a debt number on the bill. If it's $15 or $5 or $20, whatever that number is. And then the resident also knows, or the business owner, how much is actually going to debt. They know that their water and sewer fees are the operations part and the maintenance. It just makes it so much clearer. Does that make sense, Kurt? Did I kind of sum that okay, or did I miss something?
Well, I certainly get what you're saying. I'm not sure.
All right, take it over. Go ahead.
Well, we've been discussing this for quite some time. There haven't been a lot of discussions. There have been a few intense discussions. But basically, it started back during the one and only work session with Public Works. And I had just received a water study report from a consultant, which was a requirement for our drinking water revolving fund application for a water project in Village Park this year. And so basically, I'm just following the recommendations of the consultant. Then I applied the same methodology to the sewer budget as well. Now, there's definitely a difference between the situations in the sewer and the water funds, and the reason for that is because we have been having a lot of sewer projects that we've been paying cash for, but the difference is the water projects are way more expensive than the sewer projects we've been doing. Secondly, when we do a lower cost sewer project, we have more people hooking up and offsetting the cost. So therefore, we still have a substantial reserve to continue our long-term planning, which we've been doing for a long time. And maybe tonight would be a good time to mention yet another benefit of this long-term plan for water and sewer. you know, the project that was just proposed earlier this evening, brownfield development project, already has water and sewer available. Now, that particular area, in fact, pretty much everything west of Wright Street is water and sewer, public water and sewer now, paid for by capturing taxes. So, and the reason to do that was to, as you know, they mentioned, the benefit is you increase the tax base long term, but you also get development to occur. And the development you're getting is, you know, if everybody tried to develop, you know, property with no public facilities, you know, no roads, no water, no sewer, it would really be a mess. So, I mean, that's how it's done these days. You know, any kind of modern progressive community, that's how it develops. And plus, all of our, and now we've taken on, in addition to the water and sewer, we now have public requirements for on-site stormwater management. So the upshot of all this is you can take any kind of property and do a clean development now, you know, that's environmentally safe for everybody, and the whole community benefits. You know, the commercial developers, the citizens, you know, the workers, the residents, you know, it's a benefit for everybody. The traveling public. So that's, you know, then Township's been supportive of this for quite some time. But, you know, in the water fund, just because of circumstances, as part of this partnership, trying to cooperate with some of these other improvements, specifically road improvements. We just had two big projects that basically got accelerated schedules, and one of them, it was basically an upgrade to an existing main that everybody's already hooked up to. So basically that was nothing but an expense. And that would be the county project on Ontario Street, which also, in addition to complete road replacement, we upgraded the water main, and the county also installed stormwater collection system, which is, I see, a goal that you've set, you know, for yourselves in Trowbridge Park. So that was accomplished. And so the only cost to the township was basically the cost of the water fund, which was substantial. But again, that contributed to hopefully a temporary cash flow issue. In fact, we've already, you know, started leveling off a little bit. But basically, if we approve these debt payment charges, and we increase the rates by the 49 cents or whatever I suggest for water, and then, you know, that includes the wastewater reduction in the volume rate for wastewater, and a smaller increase in the debt service charge for that. And the net, you know, as the charts show, you know, the current charges and the proposed charges. The average use in Marquette Township is 3,500 gallons. So that's basically an increase of $5 a month. So, and actually, Lois Stonehouse today did a survey of rates with the big four, which is City of Marquette, Marquette Township, City of Negaunee, and Ishpeming. And actually, I did a similar survey earlier this year, and we were the second highest. With our new rates, we have dropped down to third, number 3 out of 4 communities. And these are communities that provide water, sewer, garbage, and stormwater. So, and that's because Ishpeming has overtaken, I believe, the #1 spot, previously held by Negaunee. So everybody's doing it. I think we've been kind of ahead of the curve. So I certainly appreciate all the support that you've offered over the years. So I'm not sure.
Okay. Randy's
You got
got a
any
question
questions?
for you.
Well, not a question, just a comment in addition to Kirk's about the rates surveyed from the surrounding committees. if we didn't have the we got proposed $21.70 of debt retirement, which will eventually go away someday. It might be 10, 15 years, but that will go away someday. Our rates are only $2 more than the city of Marquette. So, I mean, we're right on task, really, in my opinion. It's just that we've been progressive with our infrastructure and taking opportunities. The $5 this year for addition to the debt retirement is going to be for the Trowbridge main replacement project, because it's going to be $5 extra a month. But, you know, we don't want to 5 years from now tear up those roads again to replace those mains. It's worth doing it now. It's going to cost us a little bit more, and it's going to help the road project. So that's
The overall cost, I'm just gonna say the overall cost is less if we do it.
yeah. So I think, you know, it's going to be $5 this year, and I believe $5 extra next year. Correct, Kirk?
Yes, for
So-
$4.50.
Next year.
Well, and actually, we've got a couple loans coming.
Yeah, and that'll.
In the next 2 years, and then one in the next 3 years or something?
Right.
So I think those rates will stabilize over time, and I just commented to Kirk today, a $5 increase in my water bill sure beats the $40 increase in my electric bill. So.
Good analogy. Yes, Dave.
Just to, I guess to clarify for myself, I believe what you're saying is that you would like all the fixed costs on the debt service chart and everything that's operational and maintenance on the metered chart.
Yes, for the individual rates. Yes,
And
that's my
that's
recommendation.
currently not the way it stands, is that correct?
We've kind of melded them over the years.
Well, no, the only change being proposed is we've always had the base charge for operations, but not the operation and maintenance, but like the administrative costs, the costs aren't directly related to delivering water, you know, billing, that sort of thing. And we've also had a debt service charge for our largest debt, which was our well project.
And
So
whatever.
the only thing that we're adding is the other three debts that we have into that charge. So in other words, that the other three debts were partially in the rates. So in other words,
And
we're-
the other
we're
thing I'd like to
expensing
ask
the
for
interest.
again,
I'm sorry?
the other thing I'd like to ask for again
Yeah.
is when I see $15 appear on my bill,
Yeah.
I'd like to know if $1 of it is going to the Harglow and if $2.50 is going to the DWRF, and what's the breakdown of where that money is actually going. And again, when I look at my meter charge, and it's $6.93 or 43 cents, when I see that per 1,000
No,
gallons,
$7.
how much of that is going for operational, how much of that is going for maintenance per 1,000 gallons? And that just explains it to everybody as exactly where their money's going, and I haven't been able to find that yet.
Well, that's some of what I gave you, because the debt service on page 1 for sewer is $490. So that's captured just in a number, and the 1030 is on a 3/4 inch line, is captured for water. Now on the 1030, that's the DWRF, that's what he was saying, that's really the only big debt we're capturing in debt service.
Then I would ask, where are the other, that right above that, where are the other 6? Directly above that on
Well,
the
that's
top.
what I'm saying. Over the years, we've kind of, remember, he calculates his rate, his water rate or sewer rate at the end. So he figures up all of his costs, and if, to capture some of that debt, he has to increase the water rate by 5 cents and the operations part of it by 10 cents, it ends up being, you know, a 15-cent increase to rates. And that's why I'm trying to get it a little more defined, I think. And we were talking last week, what was the word we were using? Not not, and you had problems with the word.
Oh, the debt service?
Yeah, but not concatenating, we were talking about merging them together, and you were having a problem thinking
Oh,
that we were like refinancing.
when you were talking about consolidating it. When you say
Consolidating. Couldn't think of the word.
consolidating at a public meeting, everybody thinks you went out and refinanced something.
Right, that's kind of
And
a
that's not what
misnomer.
we're talking about.
So the major part of the debt
Right, and that's not what
of the
we said.
wells is in the debt service. And the rest of it, the Harglow and the facility, and well, this facility's a bad one, the land in Trowbridge, is built up into the rates themselves based on water.
That's,
And that's what I'm trying to
that's where my
separate.
question's come up, is that's what I have a problem with. In my opinion, that should all be into a flat rate. And the operational and the maintenance issues are what should appear in the per thousand and the water meter rate. And everything else that's a fixed cost should appear under the flat charge.
That's
And
what
and
I'm
you should be
saying.
able to break that down. So out of that $15, I know how much is going to each one of those every month from a resident's point of view.
Okay, it was broken down like an annual charge, but I could break that down into, but basically, again, I'll reference the report that was done by a consultant. He's using the same types of calculations that I did. So in other words, we have equivalent meters, and we have an equivalent line size. So the equivalent meter is used for the base charge for water. The equivalent meter is used for the base charge for wastewater. The equivalent line size is used for debt for water, and then equivalent meter is used for sewer debt service charges. And that's in the handout, I believe, that,
That's the four. The
Right.
bottom one is used twice for sewer and water.
And-
That's how it's
and-
calculated.
I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, I know.
All
I
I'm-
think I can figure that out for you.
All I'm
I'll
look-
get to the
all I'm looking for
$15.
is just, and it's not just for me, it's for the residents
I
need
know.
to know that.
Mhm.
They need to know on that $6.93 per thousand gallons, how much of that is being spent on which account, if you would.
okay.
How much is going to administration, how much is going to operations, how much is going to maintenance?
Operation, maintenance, replacement, and improvement is coming
Yeah.
out of.
How much is
That's
going to each one of
$6
those
and
accounts?
whatever.
And in the debt service, how much money is going to each one of those accounts that we are paying a loan back on? So that when you get all done, you add them up and it comes up to $15 or $10.30.
Okay.
Okay, we can do that. Ernie?
Following up on Dave, a couple things came up in that. You talked about increasing it, it's $5, okay. Trying to figure out where it all goes is something else. Now, if I understood it right and listening to you, is that part of the dollars that we're paying on the rate for utilizing water and sewer was actually using to pay the debt off?
Correct.
So if you're taking that money out and putting it into the $5, so you don't have to worry about that dollars being accumulated or charged under the monthly charge for water and sewer, so those rates should go down because we're gonna increase it on the other side.
No, because they're actually, excuse me if I get this right
Go
here.
ahead. Yep.
They're actually, this is where the money came out of, that cash money. So the question that Paul asked him when they had their consultation is, do you want to continue to fund this $300 and some thousand a year? Or are you going to do it in rates? And Kirk said, no, I want to keep this so we can keep the rates where they are.
Well, not to keep the rates where
Well,
they are,
not the
but
exact number.
we still need that money because
Calculate
we,
it the same
we
way.
don't want to just stop
Right.
doing any replacements, stop doing any improvements.
So if we take the money out of here, then we'd have to put it into the rates.
But I asked the consultant the same question you just asked me, because he gives a report, and along with the report, he had a bunch of spreadsheets, which I presented to you a few meetings back. And if you notice the far right column, he showed a loss, okay, a negative number. All right, so I did the budget the same way, using the equivalent meters, equivalent line services, okay, the same operating costs that I'd already budgeted for. revenues got changed somewhat. For example, the contribution from the fire fund, got cut drastically. But basically, it was the same numbers. So when I shifted all the debt into one charge, like you say, okay, that should be, it should balance out. It did balance out. But I was coming up with an even larger loss than he was. So I said, that's when I called him and said, well, how can that be? Well, that can be because we had extracted from the cash, which was paying just about everything except one big debt. Everything else is coming out of that volume charge. So that's, but like I said, and you noticed it yourself, the cash dropped. Did it not drop? That's why it dropped.
I've called your attention to that many times.
Right, yeah.
In the last 6 months, 8 months.
So part of it was we were only expensing, again, the interest on 3 debts. That was part of it. And another one was the replacement and improvement budget got overexpended in 2017.
With the road project.
Well, with water and sewer occurring at the same time.
Does that make sense, or are you still stuck?
I'm still looking at, if we're gonna move money into the debt, and we've been paying that debt out of the those rates that we've been paying for sewer and water. No, and we retain that, or we raise those rates, where is that money going then?
We haven't really been paying it out of the rates. We've been paying out of this.
That will certainly help. So in other words, we won't be losing that portion, the interest payments, which were not a huge number, but they were, it was a number. But in addition, okay, again, that was all coming out of cash. Okay, so also like the $300,000 a year for replacement and improvement that we were budgeting for, okay, that got depleted. Because that, again, that was cash.
Okay. Going under that pretense, we keep the rates the same or increase them, we're getting these extra dollars in that we're not paying the interest or anything else out of to kind of replenish the dollars that we have, so we have something to balance with.
Correct.
Okay, the question I have is, at what level are we gonna try and get to? Or are we gonna continue to build that one up to have it?
Well, it's not gonna be built up. I mean, it'll be built up until I have enough money to do another project. But when we're finished with all the projects and everything's paid for, that's when the charges drop.
Well, I asked him yesterday or the other day, I said, can you, in the next couple years, because this will kind of mellow out once the road project's done, and we've got, like I said, one debt coming off in 2 years, or 19, yeah, and I think another one in 20 or 21, could you give me like a 1% and say, whatever that number is, 1%, 5%, 2%, this is what we're going to stick with now, for the most part, and gauge it out for, 5 years or whatever. And
Well,
he's-
you
said
can do that, but I
yes.
would say not yet.
No, after,
Because
after
even
these
what I'm
couple, 3 years.
proposing now is kind of a break-even number. So we still, I'm gonna say, 3 years of these, of a similar volume rate increase will bring us back to where we need to go. And to answer your question about how long, the report, and this is the good thing about having these studies done periodically, is they're looking long-term. So, under his forecast, basically it was 10 years.
What I'm hearing now is we're talking about a $5 increase right now. Next year, another $5 increase. Did I hear that
$4,
correctly?
yeah, $4.50, yeah.
Something next year, yeah.
So we're talking, rather than 10.30, we're
Yeah.
talking next year will be 23 something.
And I think
that-
that's what Paul projected too, was $20 and something.
Right,
in that.
$20.50.
The question I have, setting up here, is how is this gonna affect the residents in the township? And what they're gonna have to say about this. You tap $5 now, and next year you come back with another $5? I don't know, you may have some problems real quick in that too. And the question you have, what projects are you working on do we have to do them right now? And what happens if we don't do them?
Page 3, I think.
We put them off for 3 to 5 years and that. I don't know.
Well, the key
These are
one,
questions that have to come up with. and
the
that too.
key, the key project that needs to be done now, doesn't have to be done, but if you don't do it now, and that would be 2017 water main upgrades in Trowbridge Park, that's a $3.265 million project, okay? In conjunction with next year's, or this year's road improvements project. Because it took us this long to get financing. So that's why, it's happening 2017, that's as soon as we could get the money, which has been approved. But if we didn't do it, you're still gonna invest the same amount of money in the roads, okay? And then whenever I do the water main upgrades, some point in the future, I'm still gonna pay the increased cost for the water main upgrades, plus the road again, coming out of the water fund.
I know, I'm bringing
And
this
I'm
up
pretty sure
as a
if I were a
discussion
customer in
point
this
that you have
township,
to be concerned
I would be a
with.
little bit upset about that.
Andy?
One resident did chat with me about that, and I told him what Ernie had said, and I said, well, what do we do? Do we replace it now, and we get a little bit more money, we charge a little bit more, or do we replace it in 5 years and we tear up that nice road once again? And he says, well, that's foolish to do that. And I said, well, we have to do it now. We have to either pay now or you pay later, and it's going to be pay now is going to be better. And if you explain to the residents like that, they'll understand the logic, because it's foolish for us to not do it and tear up the roads in 3 to 5 years once again, because then you got double the cost of what you have now. So
And you have a debt amount that you can quantify. If it's $5 or $20 or whatever it is next year, they know that that's what they're paying on debt, and they can have some say in whether maybe we do projects or not, especially if it's their neighborhood. Not that they're gonna tell us what to do, but they know that that's debt, and they can control their water usage or sewer usage to a point. I mean, we're all kind of stuck. We have to use water and sewer, but they have more control over their use, and they know definitively what the debt is. And that's all I'm trying to accomplish. I don't like the numbers either. It's gonna cost me a ton, but at least this is a better way to fund the system. And hopefully, obviously not tap into cash again. That was just, we didn't think about that part of it, or the miscommunication in the office, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's done. I mean, I don't know how to pay for the infrastructure we did with the road project otherwise. We said that's what we were gonna do.
I'm bringing up because these are things that people are gonna ask, and I think we have to
Right.
discuss them here. and
That's why I wanted to give you as
Sure.
much information as I could.
I do. I agree, but I think that we need to explain that past boards were reluctant to increase the rates, and they let the shortfall of the need that the rates were going for to be taken out of another fund. If we can just say it that simply, and then say that the road project accelerated the need to include a number of repair, replacement, and service needs of the public work projects in advance of the dates that they would ordinarily been performed. I mean, we can get away with explaining it. That's what Randy was doing with the person he was talking to. I think intelligent decisions have been made to now make a correction that helps repair the kind effort of the past boards not to raise the rates.
Well, and
That's all we're doing.
You gotta think that there are communities around us that are in debt because of some of the
They're in deep
decisions.
doo-doo because
We're
they,
not. I mean, we have a debt, but we are not, going broke or bankrupt or something because we can't fix our infrastructure. This is different. This was just a different use of funds.
and I think we need to give credit where credit is deserved, that wise decisions have been made and will continue to be made in the interest of our citizens. I don't think anybody wants to have a great big surprise and large bill be presented because of we have to do it that way. That would bring in outrage.
Anything else for Kirk? Yeah. Oh,
Even with our, with the correction to our fees, the proposed fees, we're still cheaper than two other municipalities, and our taxes are a lot cheaper also. So we might pay a little bit more in utilities, but for the most part, our tax base is for the residents is lower than other places. And I'd rather be where we are at than some cities to the west of us where these are rates as of now, and I can see them going up a lot more because they really have problems in their infrastructure. And those rates could go up a lot more in the next few years. So I think for strategic for us, I think we're in a real good position, and we have to continue to maintain our system at the current level. And it is what it is. And if the residents come in and come in and complain about the rates, if they have a better solution, let us know. But it's not that they don't. You have to pay for it, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to pay for it in the less painful way as possible.
and the more development we get just helps not only contribute to the debt, but the rates as well.
Right. These comparisons that we gave you are only for, people like you, single family, not like Lynn. but
Not me.
Single family residences, so in other words, everybody pays the same volume rate, but it's that service, that's kind of an exponential thing. So, and Myers is coming. They are coming. They've submitted plans, so, and a C-Star.
I
Yes,
think
sir.
with the project we're talking about coming up next year and that, I think we, as a board, have to be very cognizant as to what future projects are coming up. What kind of costs are gonna be associated with it that we're gonna have to pass on to the community and that too, so.
Randy, did you? Yeah. I do need the lights, I think.
No, that's,
That's a good idea.
yeah, we
Figure it out.
hash this and hash this and hash this real over and over and over tonight, and I keep running through my mind, how many times do we sit here in budget cycles and say, how in the world can we justify raising the rates 5 cents or 10 cents when we've got $600,000 fund balance? This is why. You build the fund balance up for these kinds of issues. Things you don't plan on, things that come up. That's why you raise the rates predicated upon what Kirk's calculations are compliant with your ordinance. And for years, we have not done that. Now we're paying the price. That's how you explain why we have a large fund balance in the utility funds. So you don't find yourself spending down your cash when these projects come up. We didn't anticipate fixing all of the roads, but when we did pass that, that meant we fixed all of the infrastructure that were under the roads as well that were not planned to be done.
Dan?
Kurt, do you have any idea of how much money was saved by doing these projects when we did versus, waiting and then we have to do the roads all over again? Like the Ontario
Well, it's hard to say, but I
project?
could use an example of, last year we were spending money for water and sewer as well. And because we did not have a loan yet. So on South Vanderbilt, the north half of South Vanderbilt, there was already water, so we put in sewer. And just that small stretch, we had to, because, the road project was not there yet, just for a minimal replacement, it cost $40,000
For the road.
for one lane of road.
I mean, I believe it was a wise
year,
decision we had to do this way, and
Yeah.
we're gonna have to continue to do it that way in
Yeah,
2017.
it's hard to quantify because there's so many variables. Another thing that happened last year was we bid. It was a sewer project last year. We bid the sewer project and got no bids. Okay, so we had to rebid And we got one bid, so that's what we went with. And because of those issues, we got late start. But that sort of thing happens. I mean, I heard Frank Stabile complaining earlier this week, on his new development. He had trouble finding carpenters. So it happens. I mean, that's, my point being there are just lots of variables. But delaying anything and having to do something twice in the future is going to cost more. I mean, just.
Right.
Yes, Pete?
Just to answer Dan's, I just got from my consultant here, that a mile of blacktop is $600,000. And when we did it, it'll bounce it up to about, 7, 10, 15 years, something like that, if we maintain it. So if we put it Vanderboom or Brookton, we spend $600,000 per mile. We come back in 2 years, spend another $600,000 and do it over.
I think that justifies what we did, and justifies why we have to raise the rates.
Oh,
Or
absolutely justified in what we did. It was the only thing that made sense, and that's what you told the residents you were going to do. As you replace these roads, you were going to accelerate the replacement of the infrastructure under there that was planned to be done within the next 10 years.
And if we, to answer John's remark, just right in that one, if we can educate the people, or have them come in like we'd had, for the roads, we had 18 meetings, and explain it to them why we're doing it, and really we're trying to save them money. Well, just like some guys, I won't even ride down there, I won't be here to do it, but we can't just think of that. We have to look long range, and the answer is educate the people why we're doing it and what's the cost of it, so.
I think they trust us, and I don't want to say implicitly by any means, but I think this board's been pretty straightforward and pretty honest and pretty diligent about their funds, and I don't know. But I'd kind of like to get this off of our plate, so I'm actually looking for a motion to accept the fee schedule.
I'll make a motion, we accept the fee schedule for 2017,
As proposed.
as proposed.
Yep.
Support?
Motion and support.
I have a question. I'm looking at the fee schedule. Maybe I'm not looking, you have initially proposed and currently proposed.
It's currently
Currently, the
proposed.
one that's in the packet,
Currently proposed.
correct.
On the far right.
And if we, we're already on new billing for this year, so we can't really postpone this too long.
Every month we get farther behind.
Yeah,
So all those projections we made in these spreadsheets are now gonna be 1/12 smaller.
And also too, if this is approved, Brenda will do a posting in the newspaper
Yeah.
on
She
the
already did one
proposed
for the
rates.
garbage, which you
Yeah.
approved last meeting.
so there are some decreases, trash is going down, whoops.
Wastewater's going down.
Wastewater's going down, so depending on your use, you may not see a big,
That's why this chart, is so useful. And we've always had this chart here, for people to come in and have questions. Because it shows, under various scenarios of use. It's got it broken down, water, sewer,
yeah, those
the
last
debt's
two
broken
pages
out,
in your book
the
he's
base
talking
charges are
about.
there. It's got the history, so.
So with these increases now, we're talking about not only paying the interest, we're gonna be paying principal at this point in time.
Well, we were paying it before, but it'll be in the budget.
Right.
Next year, when we do the budget, you're gonna see those numbers. If you go home and look at your fee or your, the budget for solid, geez, I'm getting tired. Your budget for the general fund, you will see principal and interest on the debt that we have. There's 3 or 4 of them there. If you look at the budget in Public Works, you will only see interest. So we will be actually dealing with the principal payment in whatever, July or August when we start. We're good? We've asked for a roll call.
Trustee LaRue,
Yes.
Trustee Everson,
Yes?
Trustee Wiegand, Trustee Marks,
That's you.
Treasurer Johnson,
Reluctantly, I'll have to say yes.
Clerk Rattari is yes, and Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Thanks, Kirk.
Thank you.
All I know is I'm gonna be paying more money.
We all will.
Especially, I'm gonna get that point, was it .3 on social security increase this year? Or .2? .03?
That means I'm probably gonna have to pay 0.5 for your 0.3.
Yes.
That's the way it works. All right. 11A is consider Marquette County Solid Waste Dual Stream Recycling Program. And I was gonna ask you this today, Randy, when we didn't get a chance. I saw that too. Did we receive this as an actual, like, letter to the board? Because the last time I looked at their packet, it was in there.
Yeah, I don't believe so. I asked Kirk about that, and there apparently was reference to another letter or something in there, but I don't believe that Council Zappa has compared this proposal compared to the first proposal, because what concerns me is there's a statement in here that says that this is their 60-day notice of termination. So the old agreement is being terminated to be replaced by this new one, and I've not had a chance to compare the two.
Yeah, I don't-
To see what differences there may be.
Well, they
I
had
know that-
changed. You remember
Real.
they had in the packet previously, a packet which I received on a Friday before a Tuesday board meeting, where it was an earlier deadline, and basically they have changed it somewhat. But from what I can gather, nothing is changing other than, I think before they called it, what do they call it? Revenue sharing. Okay. And I suspect that what happened, I don't know, I haven't attended the meeting, I don't know if anybody did,
It's tomorrow. I'm going.
okay? You can ask what it is, but
Yeah.
I suspect
I will.
that legally, they can't do it the way they were doing it, so they're calling it a rebate or, nothing has changed in terms of the program. So all they're doing is saying, we're not gonna share in the profits, you know, we're just gonna give you a flat rate rebate based on your tonnage.
But the way they're doing this is not appropriate. If you have a contract with somebody, you don't send the letter to them on the side.
I understand that.
And
but-
say, this is gonna be
and
implemented,
certainly
even
it should be
though.
reviewed, but
Yeah.
I'm saying, this is it happens all the time.
Yeah.
It's
It
minor.
needs to stop.
You know,
Well, I
I
guess
held
the-
off on going with the county for years until they got some of their problems sorted out, which they are still working on. But they are getting problems sorted out, so.
I guess
It's
the
a
other
minor
issue,
thing.
the other concern that I have, though, is this is coming from the Marquette County Solid Waste Management Authority, but nobody from the authority is signing it. It's the manager of the landfill who's potentially signing this.
Oh, I didn't see that. I just.
Brad
And,
signed it.
You know, we sign as a municipality, and Brad is signing as the director of the authority, but, director of the facility, but he's not an authority member. So, you know, I guess as to form, I would have some concerns, and I would suggest that you have council take a look at it before taking action.
Yeah, I think I'll ask a bunch of questions tomorrow anyway, first. Unless somebody has something they wanna, Randy?
I will move this agenda item to the next regular board meeting under unfinished business.
Thank you.
That's a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Opposed? Thank you.
When's the next meeting?
Okay. Consider 2017 Fire Rescue Officer Appointment Recommendations. We don't have our chief here, yes.
Are we considering these all in one package, or are we considering them separate?
Typically, it comes as my recommendation to the board. The chief is recommending these. I have met with the chief, and I concur with his recommendation. And it's up to the board how you do these, but typically, I recommend them as a slate.
Anybody have a preference? or the clerk, as far as, because you're accountable for
So
these.
I can do it either way, but it's just, you can do it in one swoop, or you can do it all in different, in each position, but if you don't have any problems with any of them, I guess it'd be easier just to do it in one
Why
big
don't we
swoop.
just concur with the recommendation of the manager?
Does it need to be an emotion?
Yes,
Okay.
I think,
Dave?
Could I at least request that we remove the assistant chief to a separate issue, item?
I don't know, because they're the recommendations of the chief.
Up to the board. Yeah.
You know, I guess, yeah, we have the final say as to what we do. Do you have an end to that?
You can defer that one to a later meeting if you
Well,
wish.
We don't need to defer it to a later meeting.
Oh.
We can just consider it a separate motion.
Oh,
Well, that's fair.
yeah, you can do that if
You
you'd
want-
like.
Make the motion then, I guess, to,
Would move that we consider the recommendations in two motions. And one would be the assistant chief, and the balance would be the other slate officers.
Support.
okay.
Does that include the secretary and treasurer then too, Dave?
Everybody else on the slate on one motion and the assistant chief on the other.
Well, you don't have to do it, that doesn't have to be a motion, you can just make a motion to approve the assistant chief, and then the next motion would be to approve the rest. So that's would be cleaner for me than to make 3 motions instead of 2.
All right, I make a motion to
Clear?
approve the assistant chief.
Okay.
Support.
You're okay with that? Okay. Questions or discussion?
I have a point of discussion.
Okay.
And I have to preference it all by saying that I have nothing but the utmost respect for what the fire department does. And, how they represent themselves and the job they do. However, with this particular individual, it's come to my attention that there has been items posted on social media as late as last fall that shows him with 5 other uniformed officers, with a former trustee and a former fire chief, and the caption underneath the picture is Marquette Township Fire Department past parade march with our true leader, in consideration of all the legal ramifications we've gone through. And it just seems to me that that is the wrong way to represent yourself as an officer and a representative of this township. And that is my problem with that. And if I have my facts correct, this group that went down to that, you know, whether it was a competition or a seminar, actually approached the board, and the board granted them funds to do so. So they were going down there on the residents' dime and the township's dime. And to represent that picture on social media, I think is wrong.
So let me understand, the motion that was made was to grant.
For discussion, I make the motion to separate them.
Pete?
Do you think it'd be, the thing to do is have our chief discuss that with us? Since he's made the recommendation and the reasons why?
So how are you wording this motion again?
For discussion to get them separated was to approve the assistant chief. Doesn't mean I have to vote in favor of it.
Postpone the decision until the next meeting? For the
Well,
assistant chief?
There's not a second on the motion as yet. The mo-
Yeah.
Well, there
Oh, it
is.
was? Okay.
John did.
Well, you've got a motion and a second.
Now, if I can't do that, I can withdraw the motion.
You're welcome to do
Yeah, so you
that.
can do whatever you want. I just want to make sure if I have to vote on something, what I'm voting on. So you just want to separate it. You're not voting, you're not asking us to vote whether to accept him or not. You're just saying to
Yes,
separate
the
it
motion was to whether to accept him or not.
as the
Yes.
I
assistant
made
chief.
the motion to separate him from the balance of
Well, we
There's a
didn't
difference,
have to,
though.
we didn't have to do that because you're separating them out now. so,
And I got talked into that by the clerk.
yes. 'Cause it's easier for me to
So
deal
you're
with
asking,
that.
you want us to vote on whether or not he should be assistant chief? Okay. I just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
And I just wanted an opportunity to present my case because I feel it doesn't represent the township very well when we have officers in the fire department representing that on social media.
So, although this is a separate motion, and maybe I'll get slapped for asking the question, but are there any other people that you're aware of? I'm not on Facebook, so I don't know. Involved, okay, so that's the only person. Okay.
There are, but that's another subject.
On here.
Not for the officers'
Reference what he's
positions,
talking
no.
about, right.
Not for the officers.
Right, I just want to make sure.
I think you should still weigh in with the chief coming and talking
will.
to. Or you can
I'll
talk
invite
to him, you and Randy could talk to her.
We can't do it yet.
Well, the motion would have to fail.
I would like to see this tabled.
The motion is to
Point.
appoint,
Well, I can't
Not
because there's a
appoint.
motion on the
No, the
floor.
motion is to appoint him.
okay.
The
but you're
motion
saying
was
that-
to appoint the assistant chief. That was what the motion was.
Okay.
Can this be tabled?
We have a motion on the floor.
I would make another motion, but I know I can't, but I'm just asking if,
He can withdraw a motion, and then you can.
We
delay.
can postpone it, can we?
Yeah, I would rather not table it because that causes other issues. If
Right.
either the motion fails, you withdraw the motion, or you postpone it to a different meeting would be better.
but I'm not sure everybody,
Means you take it up at the rest, later in the meeting.
Right.
It doesn't
Correct.
actually mean move it to the next one.
Correct.
I don't know for sure if everybody is informed enough to make the proper decision right now.
Careful, it's this discussion.
Well, I think we'd have to defer. I'm not comfortable with this discussion as it stands right now. So I would move to the question either that we approve or disapprove. So I call for the question.
And the motion is to accept Dan Shanahan as the assistant chief.
Yes.
Okay. All right, do you want a roll call?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, motion fails, 4-3.
Okay.
So I would like this to go back to the fire chief. And we will not, unless somebody else wants to make a motion, I'm not gonna stop them, but I think this needs to go back. But that's another 3 weeks. We have a bye.
Well, in the interim, he's going to stay until any other decision is made.
I believe that's how it works. Roger, do you want to input on this?
No.
I don't know if, when there are questions, I don't know if you're looking to me to say, hey, you can stop me if I'm,
Well, the question I think you're posing is, does he stay as assistant chief?
because I'm assuming we've done everything okay so far. We haven't misspoken, because you haven't stopped us. That's 3 weeks.
Yeah, I guess you don't have a vacant position at this point, so he would continue as assistant chief.
On committees, most of the bylaws, if not all of them, say that you remain in your position until your replacement is appointed. So I don't know about,
That's different.
yeah, I don't know how it fits.
Elected position,
here.
and it's different if it's a specific term, and I don't know entirely whether the last appointment was for a specific term. I doubt it, but I don't know that. Okay, so then if it was through 2016, then you've already been without the position being filled for 2 weeks. I just don't have those documents to know.
No, that's fine. I didn't expect this either. A little heads up would have been at least helpful.
I've been going over this as late as this afternoon, trying to figure out what to do.
Yes, John?
I think this is a proper motion. I would move that the remainder of the recommended number be approved.
I'll second it.
Okay. Motion and support. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, John. Okay, let's, figure this out. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Figure out who stands where.
I just would like to see the chief weigh in on it.
Yeah, and Roger too, so we know how we're covered or what we can't do. Okay, move on. Consider manager 2016 goals and objectives is next.
Now, this is actually just my year-end report of the 2016 goals and objectives. We have yet to set them for 2017. I'm not sure if in the past the board has asked me to provide you with some suggested goals and objectives. If the board wishes to do that, I can have that available for you for your next meeting on the 7th of March.
February?
7th of February, I'm sorry. Or if you wish to set them yourselves, that's fine as well.
Yeah, we kind of lost that, didn't we? We got so busy with the election and strategic and the budget. What's our pleasure? Should we put it on the agenda next time and maybe everybody submit one item, or would you just rather the manager come up with something and we can talk about it?
Just thought with the movement that the board is going in your strategic planning that you may wish to identify some objectives that you wanted me to work on in your stead. So
I
that's,
wonder if we should do some kind of a forum time to talk about the agenda. We were going to try to put it in place for the next meeting anyway, and how we need some way to implement what we've decided we want to do or hope to do from the strategic planning. So I don't know if we do a work session, or I was trying to figure out how this would work. We can start with the agenda, implement that, and maybe set something up after that.
Well, there's a few policies. If we're going to implement the new agenda, there's some policies we'd have to change first. So that's the starting point you'd be. So I'm thinking we probably won't be ready till March.
All right, so why don't we set a work session at the next meeting to talk about it? How's that?
did you want to do that under a forum discussion or just as an item? As a
Well, we changed our meeting time, so do we want to take that first half hour maybe? I guess it depends on,
Up
in
to-
3 weeks, our agenda may be full.
Yeah, up to the board.
7.
You want to put it as an unfinished business item?
Yeah, I'll move that we, the 2016 goals and objectives of the manager, it'd probably be 2017 now, but would be placed on the next agenda
Support.
under unfinished business.
Okay. If somebody's got something they'd like to
Absolutely.
submit, definitely send it to Randy or me, and we'll put it on there.
I think last year, correct me if I'm wrong, Manager Gerard, you gave us, I think, 5 or 6.
It did. The board asked me to provide what I thought would be goals and objectives. I can certainly do that for the board for your next meeting. I just thought that you may want, following the discussions that we had last Thursday and Friday, you may have some ideas that you might want to throw out. Either way, we can do both.
I haven't even had a chance to look at those notes from that yet. Okay, let's do that. We'll put a work session to schedule on the 7th for the following meeting or the following couple weeks, and then we'll add the goals and objectives to the next agenda.
We have a motion, though, on the floor right now.
Oh,
for
yeah,
the
you said you wanted to motion that, didn't you?
Got one?
unfinished
To
business.
put it under unfinished business.
Next meeting, yep.
Do we have support?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Consider scheduling joint special meeting with City of Marquette for presentation of joint water rate study and adoption of revised joint water rates February 7th at 5:30 at the Township Hall. So see, February 7th already filling up.
I can take that. That's that will be the meeting where the joint water rate consultant will be meeting here in the community room with the City of Marquette Board, and we'll get together at that time. We'll get presented the study together. And the reason why it's a special meeting is because we can take action, because basically we're approving what they're recommending. So, and it's basically set up by the contract of our water. So,
Rick has left, but I believe this turns out to be for 3 years. So, you know, the adoption, if you adopt these rates, it would be for the next 3 years, setting the rates for 3 years.
That's with the commissioners?
correct.
It's a joint study, because we have a joint water system. It's a joint study commissioned by both boards, so it comes back and it gets presented to both boards simultaneously, and then the boards either act to accept or act to not accept.
Thank you.
So I move to schedule that special meeting, joint special meeting with the City of Marquette, February 7th at 5:30 here at the Township Hall in the community room.
Support.
And support, yes, Ernie?
Do we have this information, will we have this information prior to the meeting?
Yes, I think
Draft.
it is, I think Kirk finally had gotten a copy late yesterday or Friday. He does have a copy now, I think, because I did talk to him today. And that will be, because we're going to have an agenda and background for that, so that will be in the packet for that meeting.
It is going to be a complicated report, fairly lengthy, but the consultants will be here to present it to you.
Only got an hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if Kirk has a copy, certainly we can duplicate that and get it out to you.
It's the bottom line on the
The bottom line,
Certainly.
yeah, what the rate recommendation is and how it was arrived at.
Thank you. Managers report.
Oh, we didn't vote on that yet.
Didn't vote.
Oh, sorry. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yes, you raised your hand. It's your fault. Now we're up to the managers report.
Well, I would like to take this opportunity to remove the second item from the report, because I'm not so sure we still have ice. But at any event, I'm sure that by the end of the week, we won't have ice. So I did instruct our building and ground staff to monitor it closely, and if it gets to the point where we are having a soft surface, they will cable the doors closed and put the sign up. Supposed to be in the 40s by Thursday, so I think today probably did some significant damage. Yesterday did. Maybe February will be a better month. It does appear as a for sure that Ontario, the last two phases of Ontario, are not on the horizon to be done. Federal funding will not be coming. The small urban money has been granted to Marktran. That would have been used for the next phase of the project as a result of an inability to resolve trucking issues between the City of Marquette and the County Road Commission. So, other than that, if board members have any questions on these or any other items, feel free.
Anything, Randy? No? Okay. Sheriff's report. Dave, you had pulled that out.
The reason I asked to pull it out was I'd like to comment on what I see as a very serious situation coming up. And I notice on the sheriff's report there was a total of 2 citations and 14 warnings issued for the month of December. And I go across the Commerce US 41 intersection a minimum of 4 times a day. And I can see, as likely as not, we're talking 50% of the time, somebody either runs that red light well after it was, when it's green for me, they're still running the red light, entering the intersection, or somebody is making a Michigan left from westbound to eastbound, or somebody is making a left-hand turn. One day in particular, I watched an officer sit there and watch 2 people make an illegal left turn, and he never did anything about it.
He shook his head.
He did shake his head. He never did anything about it, and somebody is gonna get seriously hurt there. One day in particular, I saw a pickup with a fifth wheel equipment trailer loaded with equipment enter that intersection going eastbound on 41 after it had already turned green for me. And he just went flying on through. And it's an enforcement issue. We can make all the laws we want, and if nobody's out there to enforce them, we might just well save our breath.
You know, my observation is the same. I see that very regularly. Last night as I was leaving, I was the first car at the light, about to go across southbound. The light turned green. My light was green. A large pickup truck ran the red light and turned into the Westwood Mall. So, you know, I mean, it was literally 100 feet away. They ran the red light to get to the driveway.
I'm not sure how you address it. I didn't know how else to get to this without pulling that aside for comment.
You can always ask me. I can figure it out, or if it's a Roger question, that's fine.
Dave,
But-
was that our car? Was that the township car?
No, it was not the
No, it's
township
not the
car.
township car.
But it was a patrol, an active patrol vehicle, and it's. I have seen the state police post out there periodically, and I mean the issue is that it's a simple issue. Observe the speed limits and observe the traffic lights. I guarantee you, we could go out there and sit for 10 minutes right now, and we would see cars routinely run that red light constantly, try and beat the yellow, and they don't do it. And you know, and there are cars stacked waiting to go. Yeah, that's why the corridor is dangerous. Driver behavior. It's not the corridor, it's not the road, it's not the driveways, it's driver behavior. It's not the darkness, and it's not the lack of lights. It's texting, it's speeding, and it's not paying attention to what you're doing.
Well, I was gonna suggest this week, before it got too busy, that we introduce ourselves to our new, but, I was gonna say military,
Sheriff.
our sheriff's department, and maybe either invite them or ask them if they wanna have coffee, we can have a conversation with them.
I would have hoped they would have been at this meeting, since this is really the first meeting since they took office, and we are a contractor to them, but apparently not.
Well, they did have a meet and greet type thing, I don't
Yeah.
remember if it was the chamber or the partnership or somebody, and we were invited,
Hmm.
but we were having a meeting, so we kinda lost out there, but
Did we send notice out for that? For the greet and meet?
no, it didn't come from us.
Oh, it didn't come for us?
For us, yes.
And I guess in all fairness, these events that Dave was referring to was not under the current new sheriff's administration, but we did report it. We did make contact with the captain and filed a complaint.
The topper was this afternoon.
Or,
A tractor trailer coming off of Commerce. And these guys, I mean, that's what they do for a living. They should certainly be able to read a no-turn sign.
No turned.
And they should certainly be familiar with Michigan lefts. He went across Commerce and made a left-hand turn going eastbound on 41.
I've seen that before. If it might even be the same truck.
Something that's 55 feet long.
yeah.
You ever think about using the east end of Brookton to get out on the highway?
Let's
Well,
figure out like some kind of a breakfast, or they can come and visit with us, or we'll have a conversation.
I believe 2 citations in a month is really not doing his job. I'm sure there's a lot more citations that could be written than 2.
And then Pete gets his penal fines, he'd be happy, because that would increase
My
that.
last comment is if he just sat at the corner of Commerce and 41, we could put the whole operation into black.
We don't get the benefit of those.
I know. Is it possible that they weren't our patrol and they
It don't make any
didn't
difference.
wanna cross
It's-
over?
it's
They figured,
dangerous.
you know, like the city doesn't come into this
The-
township
No.
and
The car I
state doesn't
observed was
come.
a sheriff's department car.
Okay,
Marked car.
so they're not inhibited by.
No, absolutely not. No, we have the same level of basic coverage, and then we purchase an additional 80 hours.
I just thought maybe they were.
Specific.
figuring they were crossing over and they shouldn't.
Yep,
Okay.
and that's why we have our car painted our colors, so we can assure that they're in the township. But all of the sheriff's patrol vehicles have equal authority in the township.
Okay. we'll
As
do
well
that.
as state.
We just want that corridor as safe as possible.
Okay. Are we good?
Ticket.
We'll look into
Yeah.
that. Public comment? We've got 2 publics left. Anybody want to say anything? Nope. Okay. How about, yeah, two committee members. How about board member comment? Anybody want to share anything else?
Just one comment, when Susan was here last week, she reminded us to keep our meetings under 2 hours to be effective. And we're now pushing 2 hours and 45 minutes.
Yeah, but this wasn't our meeting problem.
Well, we always seem to have something that takes a long time,
We
but.
have wordy people at that podium.
But as she stated, some of it is not board business, and hopefully we'll get that off the agenda so that we can do our business in an efficient manner, because the not board business shouldn't be on our agenda. So, and that will keep our meetings. She even suggested having 1 meeting a month, and I said, I don't think that's going to happen, but it was.
Yeah.
For the residents, we are trying to make this more efficient for you. So hopefully by March, we'll have a better agenda, because after 2 hours and 30, after 2 hours, we're really not effective any longer.
Lane, can I just say one thing? I don't know if everybody knows it, but there was a great cooperation between Kurt Page with the water department and Rhonda Mars with the fire department. Kurt had a snowmobile over at the water department
Yep.
that really wasn't being utilized to its potential, and he and Ron got together, talked about it. It is now housed up at the fire department, so we can use that on snowmobile accidents where we can pull our little rescue sled with it, and the water department people can still use it. They got access to the fire department to get it if they do need it. So I just wanted to say that was great joint effort between both departments working together for one goal.
Any board members that are interested in going to the MTA conference in April, get in touch with Lois tomorrow, because the rooms are, the Radisson's already filled up, so.
We need to know about the bus, so I can ask you guys after too. who's gonna do what. Anything else? One more motion?
So moved.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We are adjourned at 9:18.